Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. Myra's voice trembled with desperation as she pounded the steering wheel. "Oh God," she moaned, helpless, staring at the darkening Wyoming sky. Her Jeep Laredo was stuck in the mud, two wheels off the road and spinning in the slick muck. She had been stranded for over an hour, and as the storm clouds gathered overhead, the weight of her situation settled in. Her heart raced. If Barry found her now, she'd be dead. He had promised her that the next time she tried to leave, she wouldn't survive. He was crazy and a cop. He had boasted of the lives he'd taken and how he'd always gotten away with it. One look into his cold eyes, and she knew he was a killer. Myra had been alone ever since her father passed. The day of the funeral, Barry had shown up, pretending to be a business associate. A week later, he knocked on her door, his face twisted in a hard, unsettling grin. "Remember me?" he asked. Fear tightened her chest as he barged in, knocking her to the floor. "Don't ever doubt me," he spat, dragging her to her feet with a vice-like grip. From that moment on, he controlled every part of her life. The abuse started immediately, first physical, then financial. The next day, he emptied her bank account and shredded her credit cards, leaving only a hidden savings account untouched. Myra tried to escape once, but Barry tracked her down, humiliating her in front of strangers before dragging her back home. "Try it again," he sneered, "and I'll make you beg for mercy." His words were laced with a terrifying certainty. For 6 months, Myra endured the torment. Barry showed no hint of humanity, only cruelty and a thirst for control. Then, one evening, her chance arrived. The doorbell rang, and 2 FBI agents stood on the other side. Barry immediately tried to shut the door on them, but one agent blocked it. "Barry Schultz, we have a warrant for your arrest," the agent said. Barry didn't hesitate. He tossed one agent aside and aimed to kill the other. In that moment, Myra grabbed a knife from the kitchen and rushed at him, stabbing him in the back. He spun around, enraged, aiming the gun at her. Myra closed her eyes, bracing for the end. But then, in the chaos, one of the agents managed to pull a small revolver and shot Barry. As he fell, the agents moved in, subduing him with practiced precision. Myra watched, still shaking, as they dragged him out the door. With her heart pounding, Myra grabbed her shoes and jacket, bolting out the back door. The agents, focused solely on Barry, never even thought to follow her. If they had, they would have discovered the true extent of her torment. To Myra, they were 2 more men to get away from, and nothing more. She ran out the back door and waited in the side yard until they left with their prisoner. As soon as the FBI agents drove away with their unconscious trophy, she went back inside the house, changed clothes, and packed as fast as she could. She carried her 2 packed suitcases to the older-than-she-owned Jeep Laredo. Myra whimpered her fear as she made one last trip into the house to remove a small metal box from its hiding place in the attic. Barry had not found the box that held her father's most important papers. In his arrogance, he was positive Myra would never dare to hide anything from him after the initial beatings. She turned off all the lights, carefully locked the house, and drove away. Her destination was a ranch somewhere near the small town of Walden, Colorado. After a week of erratic driving and losing her way, she found herself stuck in the mud on a paved road between Laramie, Wyoming, and Walden, a tiny town barely more than a dot on the map. When she heard a knock on the side window, panic surged through her, and she collapsed in the seat, huddling in fear. "Please, don't hurt me," she cried. The driver's side door swung open. "Nobody's gonna hurt you, ma'am. Not right here, anyway," he said with a calm, controlled voice. "I was gonna ask if you were okay, but judging by your reaction, I can see that's probably not the case." He sniffed the air inside the car. "You been drinking or using something you shouldn't? Please step out of the car." He took a few steps back, keeping his hand on his sidearm, a businesslike Colt automatic. She slid out of the car and stood quiet with her head down as she waited for the next order. "Let's see your driver's license." She nodded toward the front seat. "It's in the car." Her haunted eyes and beaten attitude made him suspicious. "Get it," he ordered, and moved slow. "Here," she said, and handed him the requested license. "The registration is on the sun visor." He waved her away. The radio in the prowl car squawked. He backed away from her toward his car. "This is car 29er, dispatch. What do you have on the 1985 Jeep Laredo I called in earlier?" "All clear, no wants." New York registration matches vehicle description. Vehicle is registered in the name of Myra Elaine Ford, the dispatcher intoned in a bored voice. He listened to the droning recital while he kept a close watch on Myra. "Thanks, dispatch, out." He hung the mic on the dash. "You check out okay. But there's something about you has my suspicion made her up and running. Who you on the run from? He could almost smell her fear. From a policeman who wants to kill me, she blurted. He stepped back as if slapped. In a neutral voice he asked, and why does this police officer wish to kill you? He watched her very close. You never could tell about the nuts on the roads these days. Hell, maybe she did have an old man who was a cop and whacked her but now and then. Maybe she needed it. Who knows? That was not his concern. He waited to hear her bull answer. She took a deep breath and blurted out, because he's crazy and he swore if I ever tried to get away from him again he would kill me. And he meant it. She began to sob again. Do you know his name? He asked, not about ready to believe her. Hell, cops don't go around killing their girlfriends. Leastways not the cops he knew. Police Sergeant Barry Schultz of the New York City Police Department, assigned to a narcotics task force before the FBI arrested him. Her voice sounded as dead as her eyes looked right then. She was a portrait of misery. In misery, she added, if they let him out on bail, he will come after me and kill me. He looked at her, shook his head, and eased his attitude. Oh yeah, I read about him in the newspapers and again when they showed him on TV as he escaped custody. He did it right in front of the cameras. The highway patrolman paused, then added, he had help from someone. She began to tremble as panic overwhelmed her again. Oh my God, I have to get away from here. Please, I'm stuck in the mud. I can't get out. I can't let him catch me. He and his friends are all crazy. Even the other cops are afraid of them. Can't you call a wrecker? Why don't you drive out? He asked her. Didn't she know anything? I can't, she answered in a forlorn voice. My wheels just spin when I try to drive back up onto the road. He shook his head in wonder at how stupid some people were. Why did he get the dumb ones? And she wasn't even blonde. Is your four-wheel drive broke? I don't know. She answered helpless. I never used it before. He took a deep breath and asked, do you know how to engage the front wheels? No, she said in a small voice. I'll do it for you. Please step aside. He turned the locking hubs on the front wheels, got in behind the steering wheel, and put the little Jeep in gear. He eased the Laredo forward 10 feet and stopped. He got back out and held the door for her. Thank you, she told him fervently as she got in and closed the door. She rolled down the window. Thank you again. I better warn you, there's a snow advisory out for tonight. We have been getting some real freaky weather up here between Woods Landing and across the state line as far east as Steamboat. You better get to a hotel and wait out the storm we have coming in. He hesitated a moment, then continued. Do you have much further to travel this evening? I notice you don't have much experience driving in the mountains. He smiled to reassure her he was interested in her welfare. In reality, he did not care what happened to her, so long as it was far away from him, preferably in another state. I hope I'm almost there. My destination is called the Old Weber Ranch, just past Walden, a short distance. Well, don't you let me hold you up. You have a safe drive, ma'am. He smiled again and watched as she drove back onto the pavement and continued toward the town of Walden, Colorado. 2 days later, blinded by the snow, her gas tank almost empty, the old, powder blue Laredo drifted off the road and down a steep hill. The first bump jolted Mira awake. Dazed and confused, she grabbed the steering wheel tight in both hands and looked in horror at the empty whiteness that covered everything in front of her. Then the car slammed to a stop against something. Mira was knocked unconscious. The wind outside the small Jeep howled and blew the loose snow around. Then it died down and all was quiet. 2 days earlier, Jonas Morgan felt the first snowflakes touch his face and melt. He had smelled the snow in the air last night, just before he went to bed. The morning air tasted of snow when he rolled out of bed at 4:30, and now the promised snow had arrived. He smiled to himself as he walked toward the barn. Snowflakes touching a man's face seemed a personal thing to be enjoyed alone. He snorted as he thought of the looks he would get if he walked into the Buckhorn Bar and announced, I love to feel snowflakes on my face. No, there were some thoughts best not shared with other men, not in cowboy country anyway. In the pre-dawn dark, it was difficult to see more than vague shadows once he left the house. He walked the short distance from the ranch house to the barn to milk the 8 cows waiting outside for him to let them in. This mini dairy operation he ran on the side brought him a small, but steady supply of much-needed cash. As he walked toward the cattle barn, false dawn gleamed faint red for a moment, showing faint streaks over the mountains to the east. It cast dim rose-colored reflections of light in the snow not quite bright enough to see by. Then it disappeared again and left the world in shadows and darkness. The cold wind made his face feel stiff. He was long used to the sensation. It was like an old acquaintance he became accustomed to over the years and didn't pay attention to anymore. He opened the rear barn doors to let the milk cows inside. As they crowded and shoved at each other to enter their assigned stalls, he portioned out the large hand scoop of grain into each cow's feed box. Then, when the cows stuck their heads through the stanchions to eat, he locked them in tight. Damn, he muttered to himself as he did every milking. I need to get me a hired hand to help out around here. This old stuff is getting to be way too much for me. He let out a tired sigh, grabbed one of the waiting milk buckets and a milking stool to begin his twice-daily milking chore. A short hour later, the cows were released to return to the meadow behind the barn, while Jonas continued to complete his first chores of the day. He poured the fresh milk into the separator in the milk room, turned it on, and added more as the level in the bowl lowered. As the last few drops left the spout, he carried the cream to the cool room. He took a portion of the skim milk to the 350 chickens in the hen house. The half-dozen hogs he raised got the rest, mixed with commercial hog feed. Nothing was wasted. Jonas scalded the now empty milk buckets and hung them on pegs for the next milking in the evening. "Well, damn," he exclaimed as he walked out of the barn and into what seemed like a solid wall of falling snow. With an unerring sense of direction, he turned a sharp 60 degrees as he left the barn door and headed toward the house. If the wind had started to shift around, he would have been in trouble. A shifting wind blew falling snow in ever-changing directions and confused a person's sense of direction when caught out in it. If it had happened this time, Jonas would have had the choice to wait the storm out in the barn or use an anchor rope to get to the house. Once up on the front porch of the small ranch house, he stomped the snow off his boots and opened the outside door to the enclosed entryway. He hung his heavy sheepskin jacket on a peg by the door and went on into the house proper. Out of habit, he turned on the television as he made his way to the kitchen. He placed a heavy cast-iron griddle on the propane gas range and lit the burner beneath it. Jonas began preparing his first meal of the day, each motion fluid and efficient. He placed a ham steak on the griddle and retrieved 3 eggs from the fridge, moving with controlled precision. Captain Ford had once jokingly referred to him as the most meticulous killer in captivity. Back then, Jonas was known as a man devoid of emotion. Lerps and snipers couldn't afford the luxury of emotions. The 20-cup coffee pot had started brewing at 4 a.m. He poured his first mug and set it on the table. The eggs sizzled on the griddle as he removed the ham and placed it on a plate. 2 biscuits, left over from dinner the night before, completed his breakfast. As he sat at the kitchen table to eat, the television announcer's voice filtered from the next room. "More snow is expected in the evening." Jonas paused and chuckled. "Well, that's what it says here on the paper in front of me. When I came to work this morning, it was what I'd call blizzard conditions." "No kidding," Jonas muttered into his eggs. He looked out the kitchen window at the solid white wall and shook his head as he continued to eat. The phone jolted him out of his rumination. He stood and grabbed the extension off the kitchen wall. "Hello?" A harsh voice on the other end asked. "Is Mira Ford there? Let me speak to her." "Is this a trick question?" "Mira Ford is in heaven, singing, while Les Paul plays accompaniment. She died years ago, way before I was born." Jonas's face formed into a frown as he wondered who the nut on the line was. "Listen, scumsucker, you get her skinny but to the phone right now, or you'll be next." The voice was raised to a yell. "Anytime you're ready. A-hole, I am. I don't take even empty threats kindly." He hung up and returned to his meal. He had more pressing problems right then than some crazy fool on the phone. He finished his meal, then placed the dishes in the dishwasher. Back on his parka. When he struggled through the blowing snow out to the horse barn, he got an uneasy feeling. Then the power went out just as he opened the door to the one-stall infirmary. He heard a nervous snuffling and hoofs shifting on the straw-covered concrete floor. "Easy, Frank. I'm here," he told the unseen horse in a low, calming voice. The horse gave a soft whicker. His acceptance all was okay. Jonas fumbled his way along the wall to his left and felt around until his fingers touched the Coleman lamp hanging there for such an emergency. An exact 20 strokes of the small pressure pump and 1 Bic lighter click was all it took. The white-hot glare of the gasoline lantern illuminated the infirmary and cast sharp shadows in the corners of the room. He hung the lantern back on its peg. The horse snorted his restlessness. Jonas checked the leg injury where the big animal got tangled in a strand of broken barbed wire. "All right, you're good as new. Go join your friends." He removed the halter from the horse's head and opened the side door. The horse had to be urged to leave the warm comfort of the small infirmary. Jonas returned to the now darkened house and walked through the interior to the enclosed back porch. The generator started on the first try. Once it began to run smoothly, Jonas flipped the switch to activate the emergency lighting system. The outbuildings were illuminated by low-wattage bulbs. He surveyed the area, feeling a sense of restlessness. On board, he thought to himself, "I should hire someone to help around here." He paused for a moment, then added, "Someone who can get things done without causing any trouble." Jonas chuckled quietly at his own thoughts before heading to the hen house. The flock of Polish chickens clucked and fluttered at his intrusion. He made sure they had plenty of food and water. The small string of dim, 60-watt bulbs provided enough light and a bit of warmth to break the chill in the coop and keep the chickens' water from freezing. Jonas grunted to himself as he straightened up, looked around at the chickens huddled together on the perches, and said, "To hell with it." He hurried into the milk room in the barn, grabbed up a small bucket of skim milk, and returned to the chicken house. He poured it into a waiting dispenser and barred the door behind him as he left. Jonas strode toward the machinery shed, went inside, and dragged his big snowmobile back out. He pointed it toward Walden and started the engine. He let the engine warm up for 1 minute, then hopped on. He rode up the hill cross-country to the road, turned left, and followed alongside it toward Walden. Jonas stayed in the bar pit, even though the snow on the road was more than deep enough to drive on. He figured there was always a chance of some idiot to come blasting down the road, drunk or stoned on his way to Steamboat Springs. A minute later, Jonas's precaution proved itself to be a good one. An old powder blue Jeep Laredo came blasting up the road toward him. The driver drove too fast for the road conditions. "I'll see that son of a bitch nose down in the snow when I come back by here going home," he muttered to himself. Stupid fool. He concentrated on his driving. The trip to town took almost an hour after he started out from the ranch. He was chilled by the time he pulled up in front of the Buckhorn Bar and Cafe. Inside the bar, kerosene lamps hung at strategic places to give the interior of the place not quite adequate illumination. He got off the snowmobile and went inside. "Ed," he called to the bartender as he stomped the snow off his boots. "When are you going to break down and get yourself a generator for these outages? Hell, even my chickens live better than you do. If I owned a big ranch like you instead of this little outhouse of a bar, I'd buy 2 damn generators," he answered in a gruff voice as he shoved a glass of beer in front of Jonas when he sat down. "What brings you into town in the middle of the week?" It looked more like an actor playing the part of an old-time cowboy bartender than the actual owner of the place. 5 feet 10 inches tall, the bald man with the drooping handlebar mustache was perfect to play the role of an authentic-looking cowboy-type bartender in any Western movie. After a stint in Bosnia, shooting at whoever he thought might shoot at him, he came to Walden and bought out the bar. Within a year, it seemed to the locals he had always lived there. "I'm bored. I got cabin fever. In a couple of days, I'll start to feed the stock. As it stands, right now they can still graze through the snow. Every one of the repairs have been caught up, so all I gotta do right now is milk, gather eggs, and eat. I'm so damn antsy, I am about to start an argument with myself." He shucked out of his coat as he began to warm up after his cold ride into town. "Jonas, you need to get married or get laid or both. You live out there on that ranch like a hermit. You don't ever party or chase women, and I know you're straight. You just aren't geared to go it alone. Get yourself a woman. Hell, I do that, but all I meet in here are co-eds up from the university over in Laramie who come in here to slum and get laid. Or there are the bored tourists from Steamboat who come over here to go slumming and get laid." He snorted his disgust. "Hell, the last time I was in here, 2 high school girls from Laramie wanted to double up on me." Ed grinned. "Hell, I wish a couple of sweet things wanted to do a threesome with me. Us old men have needs too." "You are full of it as a French goose," Jonas told him. "I know you have stayed true to Pauline ever since you two started going together. AIDS and all those other designer diseases have stopped both our wandering ways. There are too many diseases you can get when you play love boat roulette. That would be all I need." Just then the phone rang behind the bar. "Yo," Ed said into the mouthpiece. "He's right here." He turned and handed the cordless phone to Jonas. "It's that chef from that fancy resort over next to Steamboat Springs. He wants you." Jonas accepted the phone. "This is Jonas." "Jonas, this is Henri Chevalier. We have an emergency. I need a side of pork and 6 cases of eggs. I also need 5 gallons of cream and a hindquarter of beef. We booked in a convention of gynecologists, and we are right now snowed in. The roads are closed. I'm desperate. Can you get through from your place? I'll pay premium." "Henri, you know this won't be cheap," Jonas said. "You might want to call someone closer. It's at least a 4-hour trip each way. Just transport alone will run you $500, not to mention paying someone to do my chores while I'm gone. Add in your produce and meat, and you're looking at over $2,000. You still want it?" Henry's French accent thickened under the pressure. $2,000 cash on arrival if you can make it by 4 this afternoon. I must have the eggs as soon as possible. Make it $2,500, Jonas replied. I'll find someone to cover my work and hit the road. Done. I'm counting on you, Henri said before hanging up. Jonas handed the cordless back to Ed. Is Harry Magnus around? He helped me out once before, wasn't bad. You're in luck, Ed replied. He's over in the cafe leaning over that new waitress, Juanita. Jonas tossed $2 on the bar. Thanks, Ed. I'll go save him from wasting any more time. I've got a job to do. Just as Jonas stood up, the front door slammed open. A large man stormed in, kicking it shut behind him. I'm looking for a hayseed named Jonas Morgan. Either of you seen him? That's me. What do you want? Jonas said calmly. I came for a woman named Mira Ford, the man said aggressively. Hand her over and no one gets hurt. Never heard of her, Jonas replied evenly. Wrong answer, the stranger snarled and charged. Jonas sidestepped at the last second, pivoted, and landed a heel kick. As the man fell, Jonas drove his boot into the collarbone. The man screamed and passed out. Jonas flipped him over, checked his pockets, and found a revolver and handcuffs. He cuffed one wrist to the opposite ankle and pulled the man's wallet. It was stuffed with $100 bills. The ID read, Pete Murphy, NYPD. He showed the card to Ed. Call the sheriff. Tell him I just dropped a New York cop. I'll give a statement tomorrow. Right now, I've got a delivery to make. He turned toward the cafe. Harold stood in the doorway, wide-eyed. Geez, Jonas, you might have killed him. You can't just stomp cops, not even ones from New York. Why? Do they have special permission to beat up on helpless civilians? I need you to do my milking for me this evening and gather the eggs and feed the hogs. I'll give you $50 to watch things while I am gone. With luck, I should be home by 9 tonight. You want the work? Oh hell yeah, they extended my unemployment benefits, but I always need extra cash. You want me to take my own snowmobile or ride out with you? Take yours. I'll leave right now, so you better get moving. Fill up out of my fuel tank when you get there. Jonas nodded as he pulled on his parka and gloves. He headed out the door to start his own snowmobile. Jonas warmed up his machine, again for 1 minute, and raced away. Even though the snow had begun to come down heavier, he raced along at a dangerous steady 35 miles an hour, following the road east toward his place. Hell, for the kind of money Henri agreed to pay him, he would have tried to make the trip blindfolded if necessary. At the cutoff, he slammed cross-country down the hill and stopped the snowmobile in front of the machinery barn. He started the twin-track snowcat parked inside with the help of a couple shots of ether and let it warm up. He drove it outside and stopped. The snowmobile was muscled inside the machinery shed and the doors closed. Within an hour, Jonas had his load of meat, eggs, and cream loaded and secured. Just as he headed out across country, he saw Harold approach on his old snowmobile. He smiled to himself, waved a greeting, and concentrated on his driving. The geared-down 50-horse engine made the small 2-track snowcat a workhorse, not a racer like his Polaris. When he hooked the low, wide utility wagon on skis to the snowcat, he could haul up to a half-ton of hay out to the feeder cattle wintering in the East Meadow. This trip, the wagon was left behind. Jonas loaded everything in the utility bed on the back of the cat. The half of a hog wrapped in a clean sheet and covered with plastic hung out over the end. He was not worried about health inspectors bothering him. Like all good public employees, they preferred to remain inside on days like this. With luck, only the kitchen help would even see the load after he delivered it. Jonas figured backdoor food commerce was a common-sense approach to the high prices of meat. The snow fell in a solid sheet of white in front of the enclosed cab. His headlights cast a soft glow that could barely be seen from inside the cab. All at once he felt a sharp jolt. He set the brake and got out. He had missed the cattle crossing he had aimed for by about 2 feet. So much for dead reckoning, he muttered to himself. He got back in, backed up, and was careful as he navigated across to the other side of the ditch he had driven into. He resumed his trip at a lower, safer speed. 3 hours later, he pulled up behind the luxurious resort. The rear door flew open and the short, round French chef bounced through. He glared at the snowcat as he waited for Jonas to back up to the loading dock. What took you so long? I have people waiting to unload this. Did you bring the eggs and the chickens? Henri, save the bull for those illegals you have working for you. You did not ask for any chickens, and even if you had, you would not have got them. I just sell my eggs, and very seldom any poultry, only the old, non-productive layers. Now if you don't want the eggs, somebody else in town will, and the same for the meat. Henny, you gave me a price and I will hold you to it. Henri played similar games each time he bought from Jonas. Why are you so difficult to get along with? The chef asked in a whiny voice. Hand me the money, and I'll start to unload. The next time you try to chisel me down, I walk. Prime quality hand-fed pork goes for top dollar right now, even if you weren't in a bind. Okay. The Frenchman gave a silent nod and pulled an envelope from his hip pocket. Jonas opened it, counted the contents, then tucked the bills into his front pocket. He carried the cases of eggs from the snowcat to the dock, where 2 helpers took them inside, followed by the cream. Jonas then muscled a hind quarter of beef onto the loading dock, lifted a side of pork, and strained to get it onto his shoulders. He carried the heavy load inside and placed it carefully in the walk-in cooler. After hanging the pork and beef on the waiting hooks, he returned to the snowcat and drove around to the front. He parked and entered the restaurant. As he sat down at the counter, he noticed an attractive woman with dark hair sitting alone at a table. Her exhausted eyes met his, and he gave a nod before turning away. What can I get you, Jonas? The waitress asked. I see Henry's been giving you trouble. He's been having a meltdown trying to feed all those doctors staying here. Those guys eat and drink like there's no tomorrow. Then they act like a bunch of schoolboys who've never seen a woman before. If my dad knew how often they groped me, he'd probably shoot the whole lot of them. Jonas smiled at the memory of his own younger days with Nancy. He looked up at her and ordered, "I'll have a mushroom burger, Nancy, and fries with everything. I need a quick break before heading back home. Looks like the snow's letting up a bit, and I want to make it back to the ranch before the weather turns on me again." "You got it," she told him and hurried the order back to the kitchen. She came rushing back out. "Phone call for you, Jonas. The man says it is an emergency here." She handed him a cordless from behind the counter. "Hello, Mr. Morgan?" A gruff man's voice asked. "That's me. What can I do for you?" The voice did not sound familiar. "This is Sergeant Dick Keller of the Sheriff's Department. How soon can you get home?" "This is an emergency." "What kind of emergency?" Jonas asked. "It would be better to not discuss this over the phone. How fast can you get here?" "Mister, I don't know who you are. You claim to be the law, and you play games with me over the phone. Now either tell me what the hell is going on, or make an appointment with my secretary." "You don't have a secretary, and there is a dead body in your cow barn," the voice said. Its harshness grated on Jonas. Jonas's heart went thud. A knife pierced his guts. "Oh hell, I'll be there in 3 or 4 hours, depending on the snow," he said. "Make it fast," the grinning voice told him. As the waitress brought his hamburger out to him, Jonas told her, "Wrap it to go. Give me one of those quart coffee jugs you pack for outings. I have to get my butt in gear and head back right now. I got an emergency." She nodded. Scant minutes later, Jonas was back inside the snowcat and toward home with the throttle wide open. The windshield began to frost up when the heater quit working. He attempted to wipe a clear space on the glass with his glove and succeeded just a little. He kept going at top speed, the throttle all the way out. One-handed, Jonas opened the thermos and sipped the hot brew straight from the bottle. Without warning, the heater kicked back in and the windshield began to clear. 3 hours of fighting visibility, and the snow brought Jonas home. With no thought of safety, Jonas caromed down the slope into his front yard. 2 cars with sheriff's decals on their sides sat parked in the yard. 2 deputies stepped out of the house as the snowcat's engine died and Jonas jumped out. "Where's the body?" he asked. "Have you made an ID yet?" The larger deputy answered. "It appears to be a break-in gone wrong. Whoever the shooter was, he or she was surprised while in the process of breaking into the barn." "You keep anything of value in there?" "Nothing," Jonas answered. "Who was the victim?" "Some unemployed punk named Harold Rasmussen." The big deputy seemed to dismiss Harold's death as of no consequence. "That punk belonged here. He worked for me. I hired him today to do the chores for me. He was a nice kid," Jonas told the deputy. "Was he shot once up close with a large caliber gun, probably a .44 caliber Magnum load?" The deputy's face became cold and still. "How did you come up with that information?" he demanded. "Just a guess, but I had a little argument with a New York cop who was carrying, illegally, I might add. I left him trussed up on the floor for you people to pick up. Ask him why Harold was shot." As Jonas turned to the other deputy, he recognized Troy Nelson, a friend. "Troy, just ask that New York cop that jumped me in Ed's place. Right now he is in enough hurt to sing in the choir, any tune you request." Before Troy could answer, the sergeant cut in. "I let that fellow police officer go after he explained it was a minor misunderstanding that became a full-fledged barroom brawl over some trampy female. Be thankful he won't press charges against you." "Troy," Jonas asked in disgust. "Did I just hear this a-hole right? He actually let that clown go? Did Ned tell him what happened? A local bartender will stick up for a local drunken brawler." The sergeant cut in again. He grabbed Jonas's shoulder and said, "You will talk to me, not my subordinate." He got no further as Jonas twisted out of the grip and threw the big deputy over his shoulder. His breath knocked out of him. Sergeant Dick Keller fumbled for his sidearm while still lying in the snow. Jonas stomped down on the man's shoulder hard enough to paralyze it. "Don't," he ordered. "Jonas, do you have any idea what's going on here?" Troy asked. "Is this connected to your special forces work? You went up against some dangerous people, and I know about the bounty on your head from those Colombians." "No, not at all," Jonas replied. "Every member of that cartel died in a lab fire I helped set. Unless they can somehow come back from the dead, there's no way." He noticed the sergeant trying to pull his weapon with his left hand. Without hesitation, Jonas kicked him in the stomach and continued, "They can reach me from the grave." The other 2 deputies arrived just in time to see the kick. Troy turned to Walt. "You drove up here with him. You take him back." Walt grinned at the struggling sergeant. "It's my pleasure. You've just met a man who doesn't care about your nonsense, Sergeant." He grabbed the sergeant by the wrist and helped him into one of the 2 cars. "Where did that idiot come from?" Jonas wondered aloud. "He came here on an exchange program with the Chicago Police Department sponsored by the FBI. Troy grinned. "That joker has been a pain in the butt since he got here." "I want to see Harold," Jonas stated in a dull voice. Without answering, Troy led the way to the milk room. Jonas gasped at the sight of his friend sprawled on the floor, arms akimbo, an ugly dark red stain in the middle of his chest. "Oh Jesus," he mourned. "I had no way of knowing." "No way of knowing what?" Troy asked. Jonas jerked back, startled from his moment of private grief. "I had no way of knowing when I hired him something like this would happen." In a harsh voice he continued, "But I intend to find out what this is all about, and when I do." His voice trailed off into a half-sob. "Jonas, don't you go taking the law into your own hands. When you were in Special Forces and assigned to that task force, you got by with a lot of ugly stuff you can't hear. I heard about some of the things you were in over there. You let the law take care of this." "What?" He snorted derisively. "The law like Sergeant Bumble there? I'll take care of things myself in my own way." Troy stared hard at his friend. "I know you could eat me for breakfast and never raise a belch or a fart. Even back in high school you were hell on wheels. But Jonas, hear me. If you take things into your own hands and you kill someone, I'll do my best to take you in." The deputy did not care for the thoughts going through the big man's mind. "Don't you worry, old buddy. I am not about to grab a gun and go chasing through town shooting people. Walden don't have enough population as it is. I already have a lead on what's happening. If I'm right, it's something you couldn't begin to get a handle on. Remember that cop that tried to jump me this morning? There's no way the sheriff's department out here in the boonies could wade through the politics it would take to get a handle on some crooked Eastern cops. Whoever is behind this will come calling again. From now on I won't be unprepared." He patted Troy on the shoulder. "Troy, if it was a question of brand blotting or chasing down some bank robber or cattle thief, your people are the best around these parts. This is different." Troy was reluctant to agree as he nodded Jonas was right. The paramedics arrived and quickly got to work. The two men moved out of the way. "I have to head back into town, Jonas. But please think long and hard before you go do something too extreme." Jonas nodded once and went into the house. After they left, he went through the motions of completing the undone chores. For some reason, tasks like gathering eggs and cleaning the milk buckets and the separator did not seem near as important as they had the day before. He felt numb and weighed down as he went into the house and sat in the front room. He turned on the television and sat and stared at it. 2 hours later, he went to bed. He had no idea what he had watched. Never had he felt so alone as he undressed, crawled under the covers, and tried to sleep. Finally, he dozed off. A whisper of noise from the front room woke him, a faint but discernible shuffling whisper of sound. Jonas went from sleep to full alert in a split second. Then he heard the scuffling noise of someone or something trying to move in silence through the front room. Noiseless as a shadow, Jonas eased out of bed, silently slipped the 9mm automatic out of the nightstand drawer, and moved over to the door. As he shouted, "Die!" he fired one shot into the heavy stone fireplace, dropped, and rolled to his left. There was an immediate answering flurry of 3 shots, just as he expected. He sighted in on the flashes, pointed his gun slightly higher, and fired once. He heard a gurgling moan, then nothing. He waited 5 minutes before he quietly eased through the bedroom door. He flipped the light switch and jumped to one side, in one continuous movement. His precautions were unnecessary. The intruder lay sprawled in the middle of the floor. He was dead, eyes closed, unmoving. Jonas walked over to the wall phone, dialed 911, and waited. As soon as the operator came on, he said, "Give me the sheriff's office. There's been a shooting." She informed him, "The sheriff's office is closed. All calls are being taken by Sergeant Dick Keller. Wait while I transfer you." "Well?" a muffled voice asked. "Keller, this is Jonas Morgan. I just shot someone, and I figure you had better bring a real lawman with you and get your butt out here. Send the paramedics to haul off the body. You're mine now." Keller gloated into the phone. Jonas hung up without answering. He sat down in his recliner and rested as he waited for the law to arrive. The corpse across the room lay in a crumpled sprawl. An hour after he hung up the phone, the back door crashed open. His arm in a sling, Sergeant Dick Keller ran through the kitchen and ended up in the living room with Jonas's 9mm shoved in his mouth as he came into the room. "Jonas, don't!" Troy yelled from the front door. "Why shouldn't I kill this bag of garbage?" He shoved the gun barrel harder into Keller's mouth. Blood trickled down the big cop's chin. He moaned a keening wail of pure terror. "Jonas, if you shoot him, I'll shoot you. I'll shoot to kill, man. I have no choice." Troy's ragged voice betrayed his stress. "Please, Jonas, I'm asking you. I never killed anyone before, and I don't want you to be my first one." "Well, Troy, this is your lucky day, because I'm not going to shoot this son of a bitch. I'm going to geld him. We have enough bad stuff in the gene pool. I think I'll just cut his balls off and send him out to pasture with the other steers." As Jonas pulled the gun away from his mouth, a glob of bloody drool and 2 front teeth poured down his chin. "No, please." Keller whimpered. "Please don't. I'm begging you, please." He began to sob. "Do you have your own car here?" Troy relaxed as he heard his friend's question. He knew what would come next. "Yeth," Keller answered eagerly through his ruined lips. At the hotel, you get in your patrol car and head straight to the hotel. Pack your bags, get in your own vehicle, and get out of Jackson County for good. In fact, leave Colorado altogether. And hear me clearly. If you even think about causing trouble for me or my people, I will end you. He paused, then added coldly, "Now thank Troy for stopping me from doing something permanent, and get out of here." Keller turned to leave. "Wait," Jonas snapped. "You forgot to thank Troy for saving your life." A mumbled, barely audible thank you came from Dick Keller's mouth as he turned and fled the house. Jonas followed him to the back door, forced it shut despite the busted latch, bolted it, and returned to the front room. "Would you put some clothes on?" Troy said, exhaling. "I'm just glad I didn't have to shoot anyone today. Also, how am I getting home?" "You let Keller take the snowcat, that's mine. Take my Polaris and bring it back tomorrow," Jonas replied, heading to the bedroom to pull on a clean pair of jeans. He came back out barefoot. "I wanted to ask you a few things without that full listening in. First, how long has he been working with you all? I'm trying to figure out if he's genuinely clueless or putting on a show." Troy snorted. "That's no act. Believe me, he's the real deal, unfortunately. The whole transfer started back in July. Sheriff Walt tried to block it, but the county supervisors insisted. They thought we needed some big city training, and Keller was their solution. Walt kept him tied up in the office or writing speeding tickets near Rand. Then Walt and 2 deputies got sick with the flu. The county, in all its wisdom, made Keller acting sheriff until Walt recovered." Jonas nodded slowly. "So he's not entirely to blame. Still, he has a talent for showing up at the worst times. Tell me, do you have any idea what this mess is really about?" Troy shook his head. "This has to come from your past. There's nothing around here worth this level of chaos. So let me ask, who do you know from New York that might see you as a threat, or think you're hiding something worth killing for?" "Nobody. It seems to have something to do with a woman named Mira something or other. I think he said Ford, but I'm not too sure." He paused and thought, then remembered. "Yeah, that was the name that cop used I got in the fight with over at Ed's. Mira Ford, he called her. That name mean anything to you?" "Doesn't ring any bells with me. Maybe he thinks you were someone else. You know of any other Jonas Morgans?" "Nope, nary one. I'm going to bed. You can either sleep on the couch, and I'll take you home in the morning, or you can take my snowmobile, and you can bring it back tomorrow. I'd let you take the cat, but I have to check on the stock in the morning. My old lady likes me home in bed with her at night. I'll take the snowmobile. She gets suspicious when I'm not." The deputy zipped up his parka and pulled the hood down over his head. He nodded once and left by the front door. Jonas carefully placed another oak log on the fire, adjusted the damper on the fireplace, and sat down on the couch again. His legs stuck out in front of him. He sighed and went to sleep. Jonas woke up the next morning at 4:30 as usual, still groggy from lack of sleep. He had to force himself to roll off the couch and get ready to face the new day. He slipped out of his jeans on the way to the bathroom. Still half asleep, Jonas took his morning leak and stepped into the shower. The icy needles of water sprayed over him and shocked him into a state of almost wakefulness. He dried off and got dressed in thermal underwear and loose-fitting jeans. He slipped on his parka and zipped up. Still half asleep, each movement was automatic. The wind had risen during the night and blew the loose-packed snow, seeming in all directions at once. To Jonas, it appeared the world was filled with a solid white blanket that shifted constantly. He could see the outlines of his boots as dim shadows through the rolling whiteness. Jonas grabbed a coil of light cotton rope off a peg by the door and tied one end to a post on the front porch. He tied the other end around his waist and played it out bit at a time until he came to the end. He had missed the horse barn on his first try. Slowly he went right 3 paces and then left 6 paces. He came back to begin 9 paces to the right, keeping the rope taut. On the 8th pace back to the right, he ran into the corner of the horse barn. He inched his way to the side door and tied off the rope to the bullnose clip screwed into the door frame. He sighed his mild relief and threw the light switch on. The dim light bulb powered by his emergency generator began to glow. He cut through the horse barn into the dairy barn. As he left the horse barn, he turned the light off. Jonas opened the rear barn doors and stepped back as the milk cows shoved at everything in their way as they hurried to their personal stalls. As he had done countless times before, he rationed out their grain and began to milk the small dairy herd. Jonas wasted no time as he carried the buckets of milk into the milk room, then came back and forked hay down into the manger. "Ladies, you may stay inside today," he told them. Jonas opened the stanchions and left the door to the pasture open so they could have access to the snow when they were thirsty. He took his time as he tended to the rest of his chores. Jonas fed the hogs last of all. Then he retraced his steps and held onto the line stretched from the barn to the house. Everything was a confused mass of swirling whiteness. Jonas started breakfast and placed another log on the fire in the fireplace. Just as he sat down to drink his coffee and wait for the breakfast steak to cook, he felt, as well as heard a thump from the back porch that shook the whole house and rattled the dishes on the table. What the Christ now? He asked himself as he went to investigate. Jonas pulled back the deadbolt on the back door and opened it. He opened the door from the covered back porch to the outside and peered out. An old powder blue Jeep Laredo had climbed up the steps to the porch. Instead of the 3 steps to the ground, he saw the Jeep's hood. The Jeep seemed familiar. He approached the front of the old blue Jeep with caution. Through the streaked windshield, Jonas saw a woman slumped over the steering wheel. She appeared unconscious until she opened her eyes and looked straight at him. Although the howling wind drowned out her voice, he saw her lips form the words, "Please help me." He tried to muscle the car backwards in order to get at her. It wouldn't budge. He went back into the kitchen and closed the back door without relocking it. He shoved the kitchen table against the door to keep it closed. Jonas threw on a heavy parka and grabbed up his thermal gloves. He hurried out the front door and made his way around the ranch house, careful to keep one hand touching the building at all times. The little Jeep that had climbed halfway up the steps to come to a rest almost to the outside door had not moved. "Lady, I do hope you have your car insurance paid up," he mumbled to himself. He opened the door on the driver's side, reached in and jerked the shifter into neutral. He stepped back as the car coasted backward and came to a rest at the bottom step of the back porch. Jonas dragged her out of the car and cradled her up in his arms. He carried her up the back steps and into the house. He shoved the door blocked by the table open. Jonas carried her through into the front room and deposited her on the couch. He hurried back through the kitchen and bolted the door shut. She struggled to sit up as he came back into the front room. Who are you? Where am I?" She looked around, dazed. Jonas looked down at her as he removed his parka. "I'm Jonas Morgan, and unless I miss my guess, your name is Mira Ford, and you have caused me all sorts of grief." How did you know who I am?" she asked in a fear-filled voice. She grabbed at her throat in a protective gesture. "Well," he drawled, "it just seemed to make sense that's who you would be. These guys, cops from New York, have threatened me. I beat the hell out of one in Ed's bar in Walden yesterday. Another one came out here and killed a kid I had doing chores for me. Then I shot a New York cop and killed him right here in this room last night. So, while I was trying to enjoy breakfast, you come along and tried to run over my house." Suddenly they looked at each other and exclaimed, "You," at the same time. "You were eating lunch in that cafe in Steamboat Springs. You got a phone call and ran out. I didn't have any idea who you were. Yeah, you were sitting at that table, looking like you were about to pass out." He looked down at her and asked, "Who the hell is Mira Ford? And what the hell is this all about?" Mira enunciated each word with precision. "It's all about gold, and I am your new partner. My father was Captain Wallace Ford. He invested in this ranch when you got out of the service. You needed $10,000 more than you had. He was made a silent partner for 1/5 of this whole ranch. I have the papers. You have not paid one single dollar dividend. I want that money." Jonas frowned at the snappish bitch in front of him. "I think I liked you more before I got to know you," he told her. "For your information, what little profit there was, minus your father's dividend, has been reinvested into this place. As I said, minus your father's 20%. It's in the bank in Walden waiting for you. The only reason I never sent it to him was because he disappeared and forgot to tell me where to get in contact with him." Jonas definitely did not like this female intruder. "I'm sorry, but it's only a couple of $100. It'll be another 3 years or so before we show any decent profit." She brushed Jonas's financial statement aside. He was in prison. Daddy Dearest was a monumental con man. He even had a scheme that involved you. It seems there is supposed to be a hoard of Spanish gold on this ranch, buried in a cave. He said you were the toughest, meanest, hardest to kill scumsucker he ever met. That is why he never tried to steal it from you or take it by force. He was afraid of you. "That's a load of bull," he told her. "Captain Ford was the gutsiest commanding officer I ever served with. Oh, Daddy was a brave man, no doubt about it. Nevertheless, he was also the sharpest swindler in the world. He actually talked an anti-war senator into obtaining an officer's commission for him, a captaincy, in the Army. He trained with his men and was recruited into the CIA's Special Operations Branch. That was how he hid out from the law. I have his papers out in the car, if they weren't all blown away." She lay back down on the couch and went to sleep. It was as if someone had thrown a switch and turned her off. Jonas thought about her mention of the head documents in her car and decided to check them out. He looked down at the sleeping woman, shook his head, and sighed. His parka went back on. Then Jonas went to the back door, undid the deadbolt, and shoved the kitchen table against it to hold it closed. He headed back out the front door and waited in the drifted snow around to the light blue Jeep sitting at the bottom of the back steps. Jonas opened the passenger side door, saw the key still in the ignition, and removed it. There were 2 suitcases and a small metal file folder jumbled in the back seat. The temperature had begun to drop again as the wind blew harder. He hurried to remove all 3 items and stack them by the back door. Jonas went back to the car for one last quick look around and found a thin, flat attaché case. He grabbed it and slammed the car door shut. Jonas felt the chill begin to penetrate his clothing as he opened the back door and tossed everything inside the kitchen. As he used the deadlock to secure the back door again, he muttered, "I'm going to have to fix that damn thing." He shoved the table back into its usual place and set the file cabinet and attaché case on top. After Jonas shucked out of the parka and hung it up, he decided to start with the attaché case. It was locked. That was easy to take care of. He got up and removed the small tool belt from a peg by the door. A screwdriver and fencing hammer were all he needed. In seconds, he popped the twin lid locks. Inside was a sheaf of papers, a map, and a gold nugget about the size of a baby crab apple. It probably weighed a little over 3 ounces, Jonas reckoned. The nugget was placer gold, rounded by centuries of water erosion. He sat and stared at the precious object. He shook his head in wonder and reluctantly put it to one side. A centuries-old appearing map, drawn on yellowed with aged lambskin vellum, was the next item of interest. A master cartographer must have drawn it. He stared at the beautiful instrument with appreciation. It seemed vaguely familiar, as if he had seen it before, but was not too certain where he had seen it. After a while, he set it to one side and examined the rest of the documents. He found one of the 2 original agreements he and Captain Ford signed. The other copy was in a strongbox safe hidden to one side of the fireplace mantel. The other papers were geologist reports dated from before Jonas had bought the ranch. A sinking sensation formed in Jonas's gut as he suddenly realized he had been a pawn in some master strategist's chess game. Anger grew within him. Anger at the man he thought had been his friend and benefactor. "I saved that son of a bitch. I carried him home through 50 miles of hostile territory. I almost got my butt shot off keeping him alive." He threw the offending documents down on the table. "You saved who?" Myra's voice sounded in his ear. "Who are you mad at? What is wrong?" She came closer and glanced down at the table. "Damn you. What are you doing with my father's attaché case? How did you get it?" She leaned forward. "Who are you working for?" She looked ready to do battle with him. "Did you have a nice nap?" He asked her. "Maybe you better go back in the front room, lay your fat butt back down on the sofa, and try to get up in a better mood." He leaned forward on his elbows and added, "This is my house. I rebuilt it with my own 2 hands and had nobody to help me. I say what goes on in here, and temper tantrums are not allowed. If you don't like the accommodations, beat it. I have had all I want from either member of your thieving family, you or your father." She looked at his face, the angry tenseness, and backed up a step. "What are you talking about? I want to know how you got my father's attaché case. He lost it 2 years ago, right after he gave me the Jeep out there." She nodded toward the back door. "Barry tried to beat its location out of me when I couldn't tell him, and here you had it all the time." He looked very closely at her, and then decided she was telling the truth. "I found the attaché case in your car, under the passenger's seat. Either he put it there and forgot it, or else he hid the thing from you, and it remained out of sight until you tried to drive through my back porch." She flinched at the reference to her mishap with her car. "You've seen the map and the nugget. With that, the rest will be easy going. All we have to do is find the cave, and the gold is ours." She looked hopefully at him as she waited for his response. She felt as if he had thrown ice water all over her when he said, "If that map is to some lost gold mine, it's a fake. Granted, you have a nugget of gold, all right, but it's placer gold. It came out of a stream bed somewhere. I have been all over this country before I went in the service and since I got out. Jackson County, especially around here, does not contain enough readily available alluvial gold to make a wedding band, even a cheap one. Any hard rock veins or quartz deposits are buried deep and out of reach, even if we knew where to look for them. Both North and South Parks have been completely explored. But who said anything about a gold mine? Mira pointed to the map. My map shows where a man named Pablo Reyes hid a cache of gold. He was a lieutenant under one Maria Rivera, the commander of an early Spanish expedition through this country. While the main expedition headed on west, it ended up somewhere in what later became Utah or Idaho. Lieutenant Reyes was ordered to search the Sangre de Cristo Mountains for gold. Great soap opera, but it sounds like the all-too-familiar story. He smiled knowingly. Let me guess. The rest of the tale goes. Gold was found. Indians attacked and the gold was hidden and the map drawn up and became lost. Suddenly, a couple of 100 years later, the map reappears. How am I doing? There is one other thing, she told him in a cold voice. A dying soldier in your outfit gave the map to Daddy. He had no family. His last name was Reyes. Suddenly a picture formed in Jonas's mind. He remembered. Amanda Reyes, he said. He looked toward Maria again with less hostility. I remember Reyes. He was a good guy, very quiet and private. He kept to himself until the captain made him company clerk. He and the captain were quite close. Daddy was a charmer when someone had something he wanted. There must be a reason why Reyes never came around looking, Jonas wondered aloud. Actually, he did. He and his father explored the whole route their ancestor Reyes was supposed to have taken when he looked for gold. They found many likely places, but none with a deep cave partway up a steep mountainside. She looked at him in alarm as his eyes widened and a big grin formed on his face. What is it? She asked anxiously. I wondered why that map seemed so familiar. I thought about it and almost decided it was just my imagination. He gave her a rueful smile and continued. If his cave and my cave are the same, your precious cache of gold is less than 5 miles from here, out near the far side of the East Meadow. As soon as the storm lets up, I have to hitch the ski wagon to the snowcat and haul feed to the livestock out that way. Would you like to take a ride with me and go visit your mountain of gold? The expression on his face and the tone of his voice told her how much credence he put in the map to lost gold. Mira didn't care whether he believed her or not. She knew the gold was real and not the figment of someone's imagination. She knew. Let's go right now, she exclaimed, all thought of her recent ordeal banished from her mind. No, he said flatly. WH what? She pulled back away from him as if he had slapped her. Why not? She searched his face as if memorizing it. What do you mean, no? Don't you realize? All that gold. Her eyes blazed feverishly. That gold. Let's go now, come on. Her eyes darted from him to the front door and back to him again. No, he told her contemptuously. He slowly got up and poured a cup of coffee. He sat back down at the table and studied the rest of the documents. Why, damn you, why not? Let's go, all that gold. We got to. Her expression changed from anxious to feral to desperate. I know, you want all that gold for yourself. That's it, isn't it? You want to cheat me out of my gold. He gave her a pitying look, shook his head, and seemed to ignore her as he looked at the papers spread out on the table. Finally, he looked back up and said in an even voice, let me explain the realities of the situation. First, you are running on raw nervous energy. The shape you're in wouldn't last an hour outside. The temperature is about 20 degrees below zero with the wind chill. We are in blizzard conditions. Visibility is less than 3 feet. Like most Easterners who come out here, you don't fit in. You're just not equipped. But, she tried to argue. There are no buts. Your damn gold is not going anyplace, if it even exists in the first place. He took a deep breath and added, that is, if nobody has found it since it was hidden. You are like every other greedy fool I have ever met. You let your avarice blind you to what is real and the value all around you. You can't even see the beauty of the land. You just want to take what you can get and run off. All at once the wind died down. The snow stopped blowing. Outside the kitchen window, thin, yellow-gray light showed absolute desolation. Jonas stood and looked out at the barren waste. He stretched and headed toward the bedroom. He went through the living room, into the bedroom, and came out a moment later wearing lace-up boots. The heavy parka went on last. He snugged the hood of the parka tight and put on thermal gloves. Where are you going? She demanded as he opened the door. I have animals to feed. He closed the door behind him when he went out. The dry, cold air caused the exposed skin on his face pucker. He waded through the drifted snow over to the equipment barn to check out the snowcat. He opened the roller doors wide as he entered. He walked around the outside of the machine twice, the first time to check for wear, track damage, or leaks. The second walk around was to make certain he missed nothing the first time around. Next he climbed inside and started the engine. It coughed twice, idled rough for a minute, then settled down to a quiet purr. When the engine was warmed up to operating temperature, Jonas drove the cat out of the barn and backed it up to a heavy farm wagon mounted on ski runners. He snapped the clevis into the UH on the back of the snowcat and drove back to the house. He left the engine running as he went back inside to the living room. His new guest was asleep on the couch. Her paranoid tirade had sapped the last of her reserves of strength. Jonas smiled to himself and went into the kitchen to fill his quart thermos with coffee. He went back to the front room, lifted a .30-06 Winchester bolt-action rifle off the gun rack, and checked there was a shell in the chamber. Carrying coffee and rifle out to the snowcat, he made his getaway and headed west. Soon after Jonas left the ranch yard, the land rapidly changed. All was a quiet, deadly world of shadow, white snow, and dark gray sky. The horizon was a blur of indistinct nothingness. Jonas drove alongside a canvas-covered stack of baled hay, stopped, and loosened the ropes holding the canvas in place. He muscled a load of the heavy bales, 40 in all, onto the wagon and retied the protective canvas in place. Jonas took his time as he drove in search of the first small herd. He watched around him for anything that didn't seem to belong. He found the cattle in a small draw huddled together. Half the load of hay was unloaded. The twine binders were cut and removed to permit the bales to break apart as the cattle ate from them. Jonas tossed the cut binding twine into the cab of the snowcat as a safety measure. He searched for 2 hours before he found the second small herd. They had gone into a thicket of small pine trees for shelter. He dumped the rest of the feed in the snow and checked his fuel. He still had well over a half tank. He scouted out the terrain and found nothing amiss. The return trip to the house was a boring, uneventful ride. Definitely the best kind so far as Jonas was concerned. Jonas drove the wagon back into its place under the protective extended roof and unhooked the clevis. He refueled and drove the snowcat back to the barn. Just as Jonas closed the doors behind him, the wind came up again. Visibility dropped to inches as the soft powder snow swirled again into the air. He fumbled around to the nylon line tied between the house and the horse barn, then followed the line back to the front porch. Once inside, he shucked the heavy outer clothing and made his way to the kitchen to put on another pot of coffee. He looked over at the couch. Mira Ford was still asleep. His lips made a half-smiling grimace. Jonas shook his head in wonder at all the trouble she had brought into his life. Hell, he mumbled to himself, and here I've only known her less than half a day. Damn pain in the butt women. It felt good to relax for 20 minutes of rest. Then he suited back up for the cold and made his way to the milk barn. The milk cows were already waiting for him with heads through the stanchions. He locked the stanchions so the cattle could not walk away while he was milking them. He poured out the rations of grain and began the evening milking. Oh, for the life of a rollicking cowboy, he sang softly under his breath. I wonder what a cowboy does when he rollicks? He asked himself half aloud. Several mental pictures of a ridiculous nature chased through his mind. Damn, I'm growing crazier than ever from this weather. As soon as the milk was separated and fed to the chickens and hogs, Jonas gathered the eggs, stored them in the waiting egg cases, and then returned to the house. As he removed his clothing down to the thermal drawers, he heard a woman's voice singing a show tune. She had a passable fair alto voice, untrained but fairly strong and even. The singing came from the bedroom. He turned on the news and watched the stock report until, minutes later, arrested Mira came out of the bedroom dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. It was obvious she had nothing on under the t-shirt. She was fresh bathed and had her hair tied back in a loose ponytail. She was barefoot. Jonas glanced at her, grabbed up the remote, and turned off the television. You feeling any better? He asked politely. Yes, thank you, she said, blushing and hesitating as she searched for the right words. Finally, she blurted out, I want to apologize for how I acted earlier today. I don't remember everything I said, but what I do recall, I regret. I'm sorry. It's all right. No worries, he replied. Sleep deprivation and emotional stress can sometimes make people act out. It's understandable. He smiled and motioned for her to sit on the couch. You have medical training? She asked, surprised. Not really, he chuckled. I just borrowed a line from a therapist after I ended up in trouble for a fight. Let's just say I wasn't in the best state of mind when I got into it with someone who really got under my skin. He smiled at the memory. Oh, she said, at a loss for words. Then she added, I hope you're not planning to take it out on me. There was something in her tone that made it clear she'd been through tough situations before, even though she tried to laugh it off. Oh no, not unless you have a mouth full of rotting teeth and bad breath, he told her seriously. Now your teeth look all right from here. Not certain how to respond, she changed the subject slightly. What happened after they locked you up? I was court-martialed and given a reprimand. They didn't dare do much more, because the rest of the company was damn near ready to mutiny. The only other time I ever saw my guys get that pissed was when the president came over to have his picture taken with some grateful troops. We all refused, and they had to bring some supply personnel and office clerks over to get their picture taken with that a-hole. She laughed and asked what happened to the holy man. Now that was interesting. He came up to me again after I was released and started to get back in my face again. I yelled brother and hugged him. Then I released him and turned to his friends and told them I was sorry for the way I laid hands on him. I didn't realize he was working for the U.S. government and was a Christian. Good grief, he was actually working for our side? She asked, amazed. Nah, he was nowhere near working for us. But after the people who understood a little English translated what I said to the ones who didn't, they stoned him to death. I beat feet away before they started in on me. He smiled at the memory. She looked at him, horrified. You caused that man's death. No way. If he had left me alone, he would probably still be alive today. He brought things on himself. I think hard, act with due deliberation, and leave my mark behind. Life is too short for useless bull crap. Jonas stood and took his coffee cup into the kitchen. Just then the phone rang. Get it, please, he told her. As he poured a refill, she called from the front room. It's somebody named Troy. He says it's important. Hell, what now? He sighed. He accepted the kitchen phone from her phone. What is it? Two things, Jonas. Troy's voice came back to him. First, I wrecked your snowmobile, and second, we got a flyer in the mail about the one you killed and the one you beat up. It's It's a notification from the FBI that those two and at least a half dozen others, all ex-cops, are wanted for interstate flight to avoid arrest and a few other minor charges, including murder. I notified the feds what happened up here and am now waiting for a reply. I'm real sorry about your snowmobile. It's totaled. Troy did sound contrite. What happened? I know you're a good driver. The loss of the snowmobile, even temporarily, was a hard hit on his meager resources. But there was no reason to blame his friend. Troy was careful in everything he did. You know that rock fence just outside of town? Somehow I veered off the trail, hit the damn thing, and tore your machine up bad. It was totaled. Only the engine was salvaged. I'm real sorry, Jonas. I'm real sorry. It's insured, don't worry about it. I'm more concerned about those ex-cops. If they show up looking for me or Laura Ford, you just go all Barney Fife on them. Tell them I shucks and call me. I'll handle it out here. I hope you know what you were doing, man. Those guys are supposed to be real bad medicine. You shouldn't have a woman out there with you because she might get mixed up in this trouble with you. I'll call you if anything happens out this way. Bye. He hung up. Jonas turned away from the phone and said, we need to sit down and get our heads working. You have brought a whole ton of trouble to me, and I am not quite certain I am up to dealing with it. He sat in his usual place at the table and motioned for her to join him. This is come to Jesus time. I don't want any lies, evasions, or half-truths from you. If I get the hint of a lie, I'll take you into Walden and dump your butt off at the sheriff's office for him to deal with. Do you understand? His face seemed carved out of granite. Yes, she said weakly. She realized this was a man who was hard in ways she never expected a man to be. What do you want to know? Inside, Mira was quivering with fear. She looked closer at this big, harsh man who held her life in his hands. She was completely helpless. Her future depended on the whims of Jonas Morgan. However, right then she was too scared to be resentful. First off, are you the captain's daughter? He stared straight into her eyes, never blinking. His eyes seemed to bore straight into her skull. Yes. I never even knew about this place until he was released from prison to die. He had terminal lung cancer. He asked me to take him in, so I did. A year after he moved into my house, he died. I had already quit college to care for him. He always had money, though. No matter how much was needed for food, medicine, whatever, he just wrote a check, and that check was always good. He showed me the nugget and the map and told me how he had loaned you $10,000 startup money when your loans and savings were all used up. He bragged how he had it set up for someone to ease you out, as he put it, when the time was right. He said you were sitting on a fortune and didn't even realize it. I thought it was so much talk. Then the attaché case disappeared, and I never saw it again until today. Then just before he died, I went through his file cabinet and found his bank book. The money was nearly all gone. The other papers were for some junk bonds and penny stocks, also a mining claim that turned out to be worthless. Then I found a copy of the agreement you two signed and his lawyer's address. The agreement had been pre-assigned to me, so there were no inheritance tax to worry about. The next day after Daddy died, his lawyer tried to buy the agreement from me for half its $10,000 face value. I refused. Daddy died, and then Barry moved in. There you have the whole sordid story. Jonas told her, I don't know how legal that agreement is, considering the circumstances, but to me a deal is a deal. I keep my word. This is a working ranch, that means we work. One thing though, if you want to share in the profits, you have to work to do it. Agreed? Yes, she was fast to answer. In front of her was a type of man she had never met before, an honest one. She was not certain how to respond to him. I don't know anything about ranching, so you'll have to teach me. But I'll try my best to learn. I do know how to ride horses, though. I had a boyfriend in high school who took me riding with him in Central Park every Sunday. Jonas smiled at the mental image of Mira riding to the post, bouncing mechanically up and down at a canter, all stiff and proper. Ah yeah, this is a little different from some postage stamp saddle and clopping around a bridle path. You ever ride a Western saddle? He worked hard to keep the smirk of his lips and did not quite succeed. Damn him, he just put her on the defensive. Mira swallowed her anger and answered, well no, but I did canter and even galloped a few times. She hated the way he made her feel so inadequate. I'm sure you'll do fine, he told her in a kindly voice. Well, there is one thing. You don't have any bad habits to break. You heard me when I said I would do my best. She snapped at him. You had to learn at one time. She dared him to deny this. Look, I said you would do fine. Now get the chip off your shoulder and let's see if we can get you outfitted for the cold. The people who owned this place before me left everything behind except the clothes on their backs. When they sold out, they both swore they would never need work clothes again. She was a little larger than you, but her stuff might work until we can go into town and get you outfitted all proper like. I laundered everything and boxed it up. He led the way into the bedroom closet, pulled out 2 boxes marked winter clothes, and placed them on the bed. I feel kind of funny pawing through another person's clothing, she told him, embarrassed. I mean, well, it's sort of personal. You have your choice, paw through or freeze. I checked when I came back in from the chores. Right now it's 23 below outside with wind chill. You won't last long at that temperature without proper clothes to keep you warm. I'll bring those 2 suitcases in from your Jeep so you have underwear and whatever. As for the rest, you need warm clothing, and this is all there is. You are hand-me-downs or freeze. There is no room for squeamishness when you are a cattle rancher. He turned and left the room. His words echoed inside her after he left the room. Yes, that was what she was to become, a cattle rancher. She smiled a proud, self-conscious, foolish smile. Then Mira was scared again. The future suddenly seemed impossible. At first, all she had wanted to do was get as much money as she could from him and keep running as far away as she could from that insane Barry. The whole mess. She shook her head and concentrated on the clothes on the bed. A half hour later, Mira came out of the bedroom and smelled food cooking. The odor made her ravenous. His back turned to her. Jonas stood over the stove, still wearing only his thermal bottoms. She marveled at the sinewy way the muscles in his back rippled as he moved. There was not an ounce of fat on him anywhere. Then she saw the puckered dots of white scar tissue. Those were old bullet wounds. She was positive they were proof he had been shot. It pleased her how this little bit of information gave her a small insight into what made Jonas the way he was. Without turning, Jonas asked, "How do you want your steak?" "Groceries are a little on the low side, but we can tough it out. I prepared steak and rice, a side of green beans and potatoes. We'll have pan biscuits to top it off." He looked over his shoulder and smiled. "I made plenty." She gasped her surprise. It startled her, the way he heard her come up behind him. The man must have the ears of a wild animal, she thought to herself. She could not hear herself walk barefoot across the floor. As if he read her mind. He turned, smiled, and told her, "The air currents changed when you came through the door. Also the sounds from the front room muted a little when you were between me and the fireplace." He has a nice smile. She tried to force the thought out of her mind. What is wrong with me? I doubt I will be able to eat much. I usually don't have a big appetite. She entered all the way into the kitchen and sat at the table. There were 2 large tumblers of milk already set out. "Here you go," Jonas told her as he turned away from the stove and placed a large platter in front of her. The thick T-bone steak lay in a bed of brown rice. The potato and bean dish was baby white potatoes and cut green beans, buried in cheese gravy of some sort. The large, fluffy biscuits would have done any pastry chef proud. She gasped, "Good Lord, there is enough there to feed 3 of me. There is no way I could eat even half that." He placed an identical platter on his side of the table and sat. "Dig in," he told her. "I bet you're hungrier than you think." He smiled, cut off a bite, and began to chew. Mira stared at the food heaped on her plate. "Oh no, I eat perhaps 4 ounces of animal flesh twice a week. I am not a big meat eater." She had what seemed to her to be the biggest steak in the world. At least it was the biggest she had ever seen. All that cholesterol and fat, all that bulk. She shook her head at the meat. "That's all right," he grinned. "I'll eat what you don't after I finish my platter off, if I'm still hungry." In a whiny, sing-song voice he told her, "Now eat your veggies." He turned all his attention to his food. She took a bite of the baby potatoes. A look of surprise came over her face. They were the best tasting potatoes she ever had, and so were the beans. She swallowed, and took another and another until she was reduced to mopping the last of the cheese gravy with her biscuit. She was still hungry. Mira took an exploratory taste of the rice under the meat. "Delicious," she exclaimed and cut off a small bite of her steak. In minutes it was gone. "Oof," she grunted and slid her chair back. "I made a pig of myself," she exclaimed. She felt stuffed. He looked at her scraped clean platter and grinned. "It's the mountain air. You will find your country appetite is much bigger than your city one. You'll see." Ruefully Mira looked down at her plate. "If I eat like this all the time, I'll weigh a ton in no time. Now you will understand why so many of the women who hang out at Ed's need 2 bar stools to sit on comfortably." He laughed again and began to load the dishwasher. He dropped in a pellet and started the cycle. As he returned to the table he said, "Let's talk business." "About what?" "I don't know enough to contribute to the operating of this ranch. I don't even know how big it is." She looked puzzled. "This whole spread, the west half, covers 2,000 acres, almost to the inch. We own all the mineral, oil, and water rights. I capped off an artesian well that is nothing but pure glacier water, millions of years old. All the timber rights reverted to the deed before I bought this place. There is natural gas in commercial amounts, according to a survey Shell Exploration did 3 years ago." Jonas frowned at her. "I never got the cash together for the call note Captain Ford gave me. I guess the note is now yours free and clear. Your fifth of the ranch is potentially worth $250,000, perhaps a little more. Right now you could cash out at about $100,000 real easy if you talk to either the bank in Walden or Steamboat Springs. I hope you don't do that. These numbers you throw around like you're talking about jelly beans. Are they for real?" It It seemed so out of place, how this plainly dressed, rough-hewn man casually threw numbers at her she couldn't begin to comprehend when they applied to her. Mira shrugged her shoulders in helpless incomprehension. If you feel up to a ride tomorrow, I'll show you your gold mine. He emphasized his reference to the supposed hidden gold cache. I'll also show you the real gold. I have to feed the stock in the southern and eastern pastures. You really love this country, don't you? She asked in a gentle voice. I watch your face when you talk about the mountains and even the chores. It lights up and you sound like you're talking about going to a party, not some of the hardest work I can imagine. Yes, to me, this place is home. I never knew who my father was, and my mother cooked for a restaurant in Steamboat Springs. I began to work as a hay hand when I was 12 years old, and kept on until I was big enough to cowboy. Except for my stint in the army, this has been my whole life. We have a couple of other things to get out of the way. Now what is the whole story on this Barry character? A gang of rogue ex-cops sounds a little far-fetched to follow you all the way from New York back here. Something is missing. The one who forced himself into your home and just moved in. What was he looking for? What did he say? Jonas could almost taste the wrongness of the situation. He demanded I give him all of Daddy's papers. He terrified me, so I gave him almost all the papers that were in the house, all the ones in Daddy's old briefcase. He threatened to kill me if I didn't. I didn't tell him about the safety deposit box, though. That is where the little file cabinet was kept. Daddy must have hidden the attaché case in the Bronco and never told me. She looked up into his eyes and shrugged. That's all I know. Jonas believed her. Something is missing, a whole lot of something. This land has a whole lot of potential, but it's not the sort of potential where someone can just come in here and take off with it or force a sale. He thought for a moment and asked, what about Reyes and that map? Something is wrong there also. The map seems in way too good shape to be as old as it would have to be if it was the real thing. Daddy believed it was authentic. He told me once when he was on a morphine high how he had been searching for that map for almost 10 years. Then he traced it to Reyes and decided to join the Rangers. He conned Reyes until he told Daddy about the map, and he started a scheme to con the poor man out of it. Then when Reyes got wounded and was dying, he just gave it to Daddy. The law was looking for Daddy under another name when he got the idea to hustle his way into the army. Jonas gave a half smile as he was tempted to inform him no one joined the Rangers. His bunch had been a by-invitation only group of men. It puzzled Jonas how her father had managed to insinuate himself into such an elite group. It seemed there were all these little puzzles and few, if any, answers. He said as much to Mira. I don't know how he got assigned to our outfit, but he was one of the best officers I ever saw in combat. That's easy. Earlier Daddy had trained with the Green Berets as a part of his CIA training. He bragged he got so good, even his instructors were afraid of him. Then, after he learned he was dying, he opened up and told me more than I ever wanted to know about his past life. He was a handsome, charming, totally believable liar with only one bit of morality. Me. Her voice betrayed her deep sadness. Well, it's getting late and 4:30 comes early, so we might as well discuss the sleeping arrangements. He smiled to himself as he noticed the involuntary stiffening of her back. You have 3 choices: sleep with me, sleep on the couch, or sleep in the bunkhouse. Although there is plenty of room in my bed, you probably snore. For that reason, I hope you don't choose option 1. The couch is very comfortable. Therefore, I believe it would be preferable to number 3, the cold bunkhouse. He gave her a pleasant smile. Just then a howling gust of wind made the house seem to shudder. There is a 4th option, she told him in a saccharine voice. You could do the gentlemanly thing and sleep on the couch. Mira gave Jonas a hopeful look. She did not like the amused smile on his face. There are 2 things wrong with option 4. She looked up at him and waited for him to continue. She was certain he would never consider her option 4. First, I stand 6 feet 3 in my stocking feet and fill a doorway when I walk through it. I don't fit on a couch in either direction. I guesstimate you are about 5'9" or 10. Also, you're slender. You fit it both ways. And, he paused and Mira leaned forward to hear the rest. Nobody ever accused me of being a gentleman, for good reason. I am not one. I wonder how anyone could ever have guessed. She asked aloud, her voice laden with sarcasm. He relented just a little. Tomorrow we fix up the bunkhouse. It has a shower, a toilet, a small kitchenette, and a fireplace. Once we get the fire started in it, the whole bunkhouse will stay warm because of the heavy stone fireplace. Why don't you take the bunkhouse? She asked in a petulant voice. All humor was gone from his voice and face as he told her, let's get this straight right now. I rebuilt this place almost from scratch. The people I bought the ranch from hadn't worked it much in 10 years. The outbuildings were in total disrepair. For 7 years I have run this as a one-man operation. I brought in the chickens. I traded for our breeder stock as baby calves and hand-fed them until they were weaned. I bought the original hogs at auction as weaners and raised them to maturity by hand. Everything on this ranch has my stamp on it. There is no way I step aside even an inch. Not even for a bed. When you have worked 36 and 48 hours at a crack, resting only long enough to eat more speed to keep you awake and get back to work, then you'll know what I'm talking about. Couch or bunkhouse, your choice. She knew she just met the unmovable rock, who doubled as an unstoppable force. Couch tonight, bunkhouse tomorrow, she said in a weak voice. Good. Let's get the stuff you chose off my bed and turn in. As she carried the 2 armloads of clothes into the front room and dropped them on a chair, he folded the rest of the clothing up and returned it to the shelf in the closet. A half hour later she lay on her back. No wonder Daddy said he was afraid of this man, she thought to herself. She closed her eyes and drifted off into a deep sleep on a surprisingly comfortable couch. She heard movement in the dark front room. She gasped as he said in a reassuring voice, "Time to get up. Chores and a mountain of gold are waiting for us." "It's the middle of the night," she complained. "It's still dark out." She grabbed the covers tightly around her neck, not realizing her panty-clad, but was bare to the world. Suddenly, she felt a hand smack her exposed anatomy. She shot straight up in the air and yowled like a cat. "Get dressed. We have milking to do and yesterday's eggs to gather. The stock has to be fed, and we need to get a load of hay in both the south and east pastures. Then we look for the doodlebug." She yelled at his retreating back, "Don't you ever lay hands on me like that, ever again. Damn you." She screeched and ran, wearing only a pair of thong panties, for the just-vacated bedroom. Jonas grinned to himself as he heard the shower begin to run. He laughed. I knew there had to be some fire in there somewhere. He sliced 2 thick ham steaks and started breakfast cooking. Still smiling, he took clean dishes out of the dishwasher and set the table. He shoved yesterday's biscuits in the oven to warm. Instead of potatoes, he made a dish of creamed, buttered grits. As he removed the ham, he started a 1/4 cup of flour to brown in the skillet and made a rich country gravy to go over the grits. "Hey," Mira called weakly from the half-open bedroom door. He looked up and called, "Yo, I need some clothes." "They're all in the front room," she said, sounding a bit nervous. "Oh, hell, I'll turn my back and you can grab what you need. I promise I won't peek," he added, a laugh in his voice. Mira wondered if he was laughing at her or the awkwardness of the moment. When she heard the door open, he counted silently to 3, then said casually, "Wow, that mirror in the kitchen really shows you off well." Mira shrieked, grabbed her clothes, and quickly ran back to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. He burst out laughing and sat down at the table, waiting for her to return. Minutes later she came in fully dressed, looked around the kitchen, and exclaimed, "There's no mirror in here. You should have noticed it before and remembered." He laughed. "Sit down and eat. We have a busy day ahead of us." "That wasn't funny," she said. Then she had to grin as she watched him grin. "Well, maybe it was, a little bit. You remember the old saying, what goes around, comes around. There will be a time when I'll get you back. Sounds fair. Dig in and eat. We have to get busy. The wind has died down, and I want to put the milk cows out into the feeder pen. It's easier to keep them corralled up close and then try to find them when they get lost in a blizzard. I can't keep them pinned in the barn, either. From all the signs we have a bad winter ahead of us, and I want things set up in advance." He added, "I will have to shovel the cow manure out of the barn after I get the milking done. Why don't you house train the cows so they would do their duty outside? Then you wouldn't have to clean up after them." She immediately realized she had asked a dumb question by the expression on his face. As soon as he quit laughing, he asked in a strained voice, "How do you go about paper training a 900-pound cow? They're a little too big to pick up and rub their noses in before you toss them outside. Also, when a cow has to go, she goes, and that's all there is to it. It is written in the Bible somewhere. Cows crap and man cleans up behind the cow. Or if it wasn't written there, it should have been." She looked down at her plate in hurt embarrassment. He hastened to add, "I wasn't poking cruel fun at you. That will seem like a brilliant suggestion, alongside some of the dumb questions you'll ask in the future. But ask them anyway. That is how you learn. Just don't be so damned earnest. You want to learn? I'll teach you." He finished off his food and poured a second cup of coffee. She dug in. "These are the best mashed potatoes I have ever eaten," she exclaimed as she took a bite of grits and gravy. "Of course I have never seen mashed potatoes and gravy served for breakfast." She took another bite and swallowed. Jonas laughed and told her, "If you have never had mashed potatoes for breakfast, you still haven't. Those are grits, just down-home grits flavored with butter, salt, cayenne pepper, and sweet cream. The gravy is plain old country gravy made with flour, ham drippings, milk, and cream, seasoned with salt and pepper. You city people put great store in imported spices when the best are found right at home. Mountain air without smog is the best seasoning of all. But I thought grits," she pronounced the word almost like an expletive, "was hillbilly food, eaten by." Jonas interrupted her snobbery. "People who marry their sisters, raise 10 kids out of wedlock, live on food stamps and government handouts. Well, I wouldn't put it quite that strongly, but yes, those are the people. She looked up at him, wondering what she said wrong. So many people, and not just those from New York, divide humanity into two groups, us and them. The them refers to the rest of the world. You have seen Jeff Foxworthy or some other so-called hillbilly redneck on TV and think you have an insight into the South. Or perhaps you saw Little House on the Prairie. You have no idea. He stood. Let's get to the milking. He began to load dishes into the dishwasher. You better go put on some thermal underwear under those jeans, woolen shirt, and a ski-mobile suit. Those lacy little but bearing panties won't be very warm when we get outside. He grinned at the memory of her almost bare rear and sticking in the air when he first got up. She bit back a sharp retort and hurried to change into warm clothing. When she returned to the kitchen, she saw he was already bundled up for the out-of-doors. He motioned for her to follow. They stepped outside into a dark world of low moaning wind and no shadows. This rope is tied between the house and the cattle barn. When the wind is blowing loose snow around, that rope is your lifeline. It will keep you from getting lost and wandering around until you freeze to death. From her expression, it was clear she thought he was exaggerating to make fun of a greenhorn. How can you get lost in your own backyard? She asked him. Come on now. You're exaggerating, aren't you, just a little bit? His face became very stern. Damn, I don't know if this whole thing is a good idea or not. Mira, every year, people like you, from back east come out here and die of terminal ignorance. Now I am going to say this just once. I do not stretch the truth or play games when it comes to safety. If I tell you something, you can take it to the bank and cash it. When the snow starts to blow and the wind shifts direction every few seconds, you have what they call a ground blizzard. You lose all sense of direction. The odds are you will wander off and die, lost and alone. Grimly he added, and you might be only 10 feet from the house when you give up and die. Either listen to me or get your butt back to Eastern civilization. I won't have you die on me out here. Chastened, she nodded and followed him out to the barn. She was amazed as he cut through the infirmary to get to the milk barn. Good grief, this looks almost like a doctor's office. She nervously eyed the 100cc syringe in a glass case hanging on the wall. I hope you don't stick that thing in me. He did not see what she had referred to as that thing. Seriously, he answered. Lady, I never will without an invitation. She gasped. He turned and saw her staring at the syringe. I never. I will. His face blazed deep red as her turned and opened the side door into the milk barn. Even though his remark, unintentional as it was, embarrassed her, she giggled at his discomfort. Gotcha, she exclaimed at his retreating back. The retreating back stiffened for a moment. Jonas opened the side door and stepped back to let the cows in. They made their usual pushing, shoving mad dash for the stall they considered their own. He passed out the grain, locked the stanchions, and began to milk. Mira watched in wide-eyed amazement as the scene played out in front of her. To her it seemed like she was watching the History Channel. Jonas quickly filled one bucket after another with the froth-covered milk. He carried each bucket of milk into the milk room and set it to one side. His movements were quick, sure, and steady, with no hesitation. As soon as the 8th cow was milked, he opened the stanchions and shooed the cows back outside into the feeder lot. He broke bales of hay loose and filled the troughs. Quickly he returned to the barn, grabbed up the last bucket of milk, and hurried in to start the separator. All during the milking process, he never said a word. Nervously, afraid he had been offended by her teasing, she asked in a small voice, Are you mad at me? No, he answered, surprised at the question. Why should I be mad at you? He began to pour the milk through the separator. She watched in fascination as the skim milk came out one spout and the cream out another. As soon as the cream had been removed from the whole milk, he snagged up a bucket of the skimmed and led the way to the chicken house. The milk was poured into the dispenser and the chickens given a fast once-over for potential problems or illness. Well, if you aren't mad at me, why the silent treatment? She demanded. She had never met anyone like Jonas before, so aloof one moment and joking the next. His inner strength showed through in the way he moved and attacked his work, almost machine-like. A real sexy machine, she told herself. Again she clamped down on such thoughts. Theirs was a business relationship and nothing more. She wistfully thought a little romantic monkey business mixed into the relationship wouldn't be too bad. She sighed. Her thoughts surprised her. Until she met Jonas, she had never felt a deep attraction toward any male. This big, stern-looking man was new to her. The realization hit her that Jonas Morgan was who she had been looking for all her life. The problem was, she never realized it until now. Look, I had nothing to say. I wanted to get the milking out of the way. I need to clean the barn out as soon as the hogs are fed. Then we have to carry hay out to the cattle. If I have nothing to say, then I say nothing. Silence is also nice to listen to. Oh, okay, was all she could think of to answer him. He led the way toward the back of the barn to where the pigs were penned. He carried the rest of the skim milk on a cart and poured it out in their feeder troughs. Commercial feed pellets were placed in another container. Again, he took a minute to scrutinize each animal for signs of illness or injury. When he saw none, he dragged the cart back to the milk room and sterilized the now empty containers with steam. Mira exclaimed, "Good grief, you have everything here but a wind tunnel. Is this a science lab or a cattle ranch?" Her obvious interest caused him to explain with pride, "Lady, believe it or not, this is a bare-bones operation. I admit the steam generator I use to sterilize the buckets and anything else that needs it is pretty fancy, but I got it at a freight auction for pennies on the dollar. I bid $20 for it and got it because no one else wanted it. I hauled it home and put it together in my spare time. Dairy and poultry must be kept clean and in sterile conditions at all times. Apologies don't cut it when your produce makes someone sick." Mira looked around and shook her head. "When I attended college, I worked in dirtier restaurants than this place. You know your business." She looked around at the way everything was placed away and not left out where it was last used. He walked over to the corner of the room and removed his leather boots. He slipped on a pair of rubber boots that came up a little past his knees. "Time to get knee deep in the shit," he told her and gave her a small grin. They returned to the cow barn. Jonas grabbed a grain scoop and began piling fresh manure in the center of the floor. Once finished, he opened the back barn door, swiftly carried the manure outside, and added it to the compost pile. She watched, amazed, at how effortlessly he worked, accomplishing so much in such a short time. She followed him to the milk room, where he used the steam hose, adding water to the boiler for a richer steam, and cleaned his rubber boots. "Don't you ever slow down?" she asked, impressed. He slipped his boots back on and led the way back to the house, closing the doors behind them. "Coffee time," he said, filling 2 large mugs with the rich brew. She slipped off the snow mobile suit and sat at the kitchen table with him. "You are going to burn yourself out at the rate you go. I have never seen anyone with your manic work habits." She shook her head. "Actually, I slowed down today so you could get an idea of what ranching is about. We still have to gather the eggs before we hitch up the horses and head out toward the south pasture. We have 2,000 head of feeder stock out there we winter for the Blandings Ranch out of Texas. They bring barely weaned calves up here. Then I watch over them and feed them. They pay us $20 a head plus feed. Since the feed is homegrown Timothy hay, the only out-of-pocket money is for the hay crew and the cutting. I hire 6 men to cut, rake and bale the hay, and cut the calves. I sell the Blandings our hay for the going rate. Everything over what I pay for the hay crew is found money." He grinned devilishly and asked, "You ever eat Rocky Mountain oysters?" "Oysters? I never knew you could raise seafood up here away from the ocean." She sensed he was joking but could not see the humor. "That is the nickname for calf testicles. When you deball all those calves, turn them into steers, you have some very expensive meat. Henri and a couple of Denver chefs contract in advance for calf nuts." He saw the strange expression on her face. "Have you ever eaten sweetbreads in some fancy New York restaurant?" She nodded her head yes. "Lady, you was eating calf balls." When he saw the sickly expression on her face, he changed the subject. "Our 300 head are in the east pasture. I plan to sell the culls and use the rest for breeder stock. They are all Black Angus mixed with Chihuahua and some Brahma. I'm trying to fix the breed. Next year we will sell off a few of the prime animals if the price is right. Right now everything I can get my hands on goes to pay off the note at the bank." She looked at him and frowned. She shook her head. "That's bad business practice. How far ahead are you on the payments?" "Well, if I remember right, we are paid up about 3 years ahead of time." Suddenly he frowned at her. "What do you mean by that remark about bad business practice? Since when do you know anything about ranches and ranching?" He felt deep resentment to hear any criticism about the way he ran things. "I know nothing about ranching. What I do know is good business management. I was working on my master's in business administration with emphasis on entrepreneurial modes of operation. As far as I could see, you do everything right when it comes to getting new business and bringing in cash. But after that, you do not seem to do so well. What sort of business records do you keep?" "I have a ledger that has everything entered in the right places. Everything except certain of the found money goes in one column and all the expenses go in the other. Every quarter, I take the ledger and the receipts into my bookkeeper in Walden and she fills out the proper tax forms. Then I bank what is left." He figured that would shut her up. "How are you handling your depreciation on equipment and land use?" "I remember one course I took where the professor stated properly used depreciation made the businessman more money than the markup in some instances. Hell," he told her in frustration, "that's why I hired someone to take care of my books. Don't you have any idea what I am talking about?" She searched his face for even a hint of understanding. "Well, it sounds like you were telling me I am too dumb to ranch." He looked mad enough to hit somebody. She involuntarily stepped back away from him as an arrow of fear shot through her heart. He did not notice as he told her, "I'm going to gather the eggs." He tossed his half cup of coffee in the sink and placed the coffee cup in the dishwasher. He dressed for the cold and hurried to the chicken house. An hour later he came into the house, removed his cold weather gear, and walked into the kitchen. Mira had not moved from her seat. He poured a fresh cup of coffee and sat across from her. He started to speak when she held up her hand and said, "Yes." "Yes what?" He asked her. "Yes, you were too dumb to ranch. I see what my father planned to do with you. You know cattle and horses and how to heal them. You know how to raise livestock and slaughter it and sell it." He nodded his head in agreement. "But I'll bet right now, if I had not come along, you would have lost this place in the next 5 years. You do not know squat about running a business or how to put your money to work. If you weren't able to do the work of 5 men, you would already have lost this place, and I would still be trying to get away from that maniac. Now you can either get mad at me and tell me to shut up, or you can open your mind and learn." Slowly he raised the cup to his lips, drank one swallow of the hot liquid, and set the cup back down. "Fine, tell me this great game plan that will save me from myself." She remembered a remark he made about found money. She asked him, "How much found money do you have hidden away?" He looked at her suspiciously. "Why? Money sitting in a fruit jar in the closet doesn't bring interest. Money wisely invested is old age security." She smiled at him. "How did you know about the fruit jars? You've been snooping?" His features clouded up again. "No, dear heart, you just look like a fruit jar kind of guy. You believe hard work cures all business ills. That is 1/3 of the equation. To go out and get new business is 1/3, and how you manage the business after you get it is the other third. This evening I want you to go over the books with me. Let's see what you have." "I can't," he told her defensively. "I won't put anything in the ledger until late January or early February, when I bring it all into Thelma. Right now all I got are envelopes full of receipts." He shrugged and pulled the wad of bills out of his pocket. "What is that?" she asked. "Found money," he shrugged. "I won't have a clean fruit jar until we eat up the rest of the mayonnaise. Stick it in a drawer somewhere. After we get back from our trip to feed cows, we are going to have a very serious discussion." She shook her head and added in an exasperated voice, "How you managed to stay afloat this long, I'll never know. Get dressed for the weather," he told her and gave her a curt gesture. "Let's get going." While she got her snowmobile suit on, he made a fresh pot of coffee and filled a big thermos with it. He slipped on his gear and led the way outside, stopping long enough to grab a .44 caliber rifle off the wall. He slipped a handful of shells in his parka pocket and led the way to the horse corral. She watched as he performed what to her looked like magic with a lariat. He formed a small loop, tossed it side hand at the head of a horse, and drew the animal to him as the loop slipped over the animal's head. "Hold on to his halter," he told Mira. She nervously held onto the horse's halter while he roped the second horse just as easy. He led his horse toward the barn while she followed with the other one. 10 minutes later the horses were hitched to the heavy flat stake side wagon on skis. The team plodded along at a walk, guided in a southerly direction. Jonas turned to look at Mira. "It will take us an hour to get to the first hay bales, so why don't you fill me in on why I am so stupid? I think I have done pretty well, considering what I had when I started." She looked him in the eyes, smiled slightly, and took a deep breath as she looked down toward her lap. She looked back up and told him in simple terms, "You are a great rancher and a terrible businessman. You have taken some very stupid chances to avoid paying taxes. If you used your brains, you could report all that money, pay the taxes such as they would be, and then use the money and make you more money, and come out even further ahead. Do you understand?" His eyes narrowed. He frowned and shook his head. There, did she see a glimmer of uncertainty in his eyes? She saw it again as he answered, "No, I don't have a single clue to what you are talking about. To start with, we incorporate the ranch. You are president and operations manager. I am vice president and secretary-treasurer. If the natural gas is sold, we spin it off into another corporation as a subsidiary of the parent corporation. The same thing goes for any mining operations or oil. It will take an in-house CPA, eventually, to keep track of everything. Do you understand what I have tried to tell you?" She searched his face for a hint he understood at least a part of what he was telling him. Slowly he shook his head. "It sounds to me as if you were playing a numbers game like the supply sergeants and warrant officers used to do. They would requisition supplies for men who had been transferred elsewhere, or Kia. Then after the requests went through, the transfer records were sent through channels. We never lacked for equipment." He smiled as he remembered the chicanery of those who kept him supplied in the field. What they did was illegal and probably could have gotten them in a lot of trouble if they had been found out. What I propose to do is legal and makes us money as well. As a general rule, never break a law. It costs more to get you out of trouble than you would realize from cutting corners. "Let me think," he told her. They rode the rest of the way into the stored hay in silence. Once again, his strength and agility amazed her. Jonas stood up on the wagon seat, crawled up the side of the stacked bales, and held on with one hand while he jerked 2 hay bales down onto the bed of the wagon. Snow flew from the bales when they landed. He pulled himself over and grabbed one bale and dropped it in the wagon. Then she saw what he had done. He had begun to create a series of steps up the side of the hay in order to get to the top with the least amount of effort. It amazed her all over again how he seemed to have planned each movement, so he was where he ought to be to begin the next step of his task at hand. He dropped down onto the wagon and stacked the first bales tight against the front of the wagon bed. He dragged and stacked hay until at last he told her, "This is about all the horses can pull." As he hopped back down onto the seat, he shook the reins and urged the horses forward. A mile away from the stack, they came to a gate. The gate consisted of 3 horizontal strands of barbed wire that tied 2 vertical cedar posts together. Wire loops held the posts in place. Jonas jumped down and opened the gate. He called "Gee up" to the horses. They obediently leaned into the traces and pulled the wagon on through. He closed the gate, climbed quickly into the seat, and called "Gee up" to them once more. Again, the 2 horses leaned into their load and slowly plodded onward. After a while, they came to a place protected from the wind. Jonas stopped the wagon and again climbed up on the hay. He broke the bales apart over his knee and kicked the loose hay over the side. In a loud voice he called, "Hey cows! Hey cows!" In minutes a sea of dark-coated, white-faced, hungry cattle surrounded them. They rode on and repeated the process 3 more times. Then they were out of hay. Jonas grinned and told her, "Let's go visit your gold mine." She resented Jonas's condescending attitude toward her. Then she thought of his resentment toward her as she tried to educate him in the ways of the business world. She decided they both needed to unbend a little. She smiled up at him and said, "Thank you. I always wanted to look at a mountain of gold." He cocked an eye toward her, shook his head at the completely alien ways of women, especially the ones from New York City. He called to the team and turned them toward a high hill. An hour later, the hill had turned into a steep cliff nearly 50 feet high. About 8 feet up from the ground was a ledge, hidden from the casual observer by the natural contours of the cliff face. As soon as the wagon stopped, Jonas stood and grabbed up a small coil of rope. He tossed the rope up onto the ledge, stepped up onto the wagon seat, placed one foot on the seat back, and jumped straight up. He caught the ledge and vaulted himself up onto it all in one continuous motion. He stood, uncoiled the rope, and told her, "Mira, I'll pull you up while you walk up the side of the cliff." Jonas nodded his approval as Mira grabbed onto the loop, and he pulled. Her eyes glistened with excitement as he bowed her toward a small crevice in the rock. As soon as she stepped through, she gasped. The crevice turned into a deep cave with a low ceiling that went back almost 20 feet. There it ended in a pile of rubble. A pipe cap stuck up a couple of inches out of the debris at the back of the cave. "Thank you. Let's go back." She turned around and jumped down into the wagon bed. She sprawled, sat up unharmed, and crawled over the back into the wagon seat. Jonas silently coiled the rope, tied it secure with one end, and tossed it down into the wagon bed. He followed the rope. An instant later, he turned the wagon around and headed for the house. They rode in silence for an hour. Finally, he could not stand the vacuum he felt after she looked and said, "Thank you. Let's go back." Finally, he exploded. "Let's go back? That is all you have to say, let's go back?" His lungs expanded as he gasped in great gulps of air. He looked straight ahead and said to himself, "That's all she said. Let's go back." "I can't believe I heard that." "No, actually I said 2 more words," she told him smugly. "If you remember correctly, I also said thank you. When you quote someone, you should never paraphrase that person. It's not polite." "How did you know that was the wrong place?" he asked her. "I am very certain it is the correct place. When we get back to the house, I intend to read a little bit more to refresh my memory. I am almost certain that is our cave." They rode along in silence for a few minutes before she told him, "I believe you are correct about that map. It is a very clever forgery. I want to find the original." They had barely passed through the last gate before arriving back at the house when Jonas called in a low voice, "Whoa." He reached under the seat and pulled out the heavy rifle. He scanned the countryside around them in all directions. In a terse voice he told her, "Get down off the seat right now." "Why?" she asked, not moving. He grabbed her and threw her bodily off the wagon seat. In the same motion, he followed her. "Because I said so and don't have time for 20 questions, he told her in a low voice. "Someone is out in the barn." "How do you know?" she asked. "Are you psychic?" "Nope, just observant." He pointed to their own recent back trail made as they returned from the cave. "See how clear our tracks are in the snow?" "Well, yes," she answered, mystified. "What of it?" "Now look at our tracks, the ones we made when we headed out this morning. See how they are less well defined. The same goes for the wagon skid tracks in the yard between the barns and the house. In some places they have been blown over by the light snow. Now look at that track from the road into the yard, the one that veers toward the house, and then toward the cow barn. That track was made by a small ski mobile. Someone is in the barn. Oh, she gasped. The anger she felt at being thrown from the wagon seat forgotten. What do we do now? Gate up, he said to the horses. They needed no urging to head toward the barn. Keep low and follow close behind the wagon. As soon as we are near the house, you make a run for the back door and stay inside. There's a handgun in my nightstand. Get it out and take it off safety. If anybody comes inside the house, but me, shoot the son of a bitch. Okay, I'll try, she whispered as the wagon slowly started forward. He urged her forward. Don't try, do. They followed behind the wagon on foot until they came to the house. Go, he told her in a low, sharp voice. Mira veered to the left and ran hard toward the house. She opened the back door and threw herself inside. Jonas jumped to one side as the wagon reached the corner of the barn. The horses stopped. He stood quietly, waiting for whatever came next. After a couple of minutes, the side door by the big barn entrance slowly opened and a man stepped out. He called back inside. It's just the horses. Nobody with them. Jonas slipped around to the back of the barn and, quiet as he could, opened the back door of the milk room. He closed the door behind him and ghosted his way across the floor in the gloom to the other door into the horse barn. He slipped through into the infirmary and on into the cow barn. His quarry was 10 feet in front of him. He had just started out the door to join his friend. The man was a stranger. He held a heavy revolver in his hand at the ready, barrel pointed up toward the sky, police style. His back was toward Jonas as he peered outside toward his partner. You can drop your gun or die, Jonas told the man. What th? The man exclaimed and spun around. Gun barrel dropped to find a target. Jonas shot once. The man jerked backward and fell. A quickly expanding red stain showed where his belly button used to be. Jonas charged outside in time to hear a shot come from the house. He ran to the front porch, opened the front door, and jumped inside, doing a neat tuck and roll with his rifle carried across his belly. From a prone position on the floor, he wildly looked around. He saw nothing. Then he heard a faint sob from the bedroom. Mira? He called. Are you all right? No, I just shot a man, came her muffled voice from the bedroom. Slowly, Jonas entered the bedroom. Mira stood to one side of the room by the bed. A body lay sprawled on the floor. Jonas rolled the body over onto its back. It was the man who first came out of the barn to investigate the arrival of the horses. Jonas checked for a pulse and found none. Come on out into the front room. I'll call Troy to get his butt out here. This gets mighty fast. He grabbed up the cordless off the end table by the couch and pinched in 911. Sheriff's office. How may I direct your call? This is Jonas Morgan, he told the operator. Let me talk to Troy. Oh, hi Jonas. This is Verna here. Troy is just out past you a ways on a fender bender. You want me to call him? Please, right now. I have another shooting at my place. 2 of them. I'll get him out there right now. She disconnected. Let's have some coffee and wait, Jonas told Mira. The wind is coming up and another storm might be on its way. They removed their heavy outer garments and sat at the table drinking coffee while they waited for Troy to arrive. Mira felt numb inside. She had never before fired a weapon in her life. She kept looking toward the bedroom as if she expected the man she killed to come out. Jonas sat and thought. They both waited. To both it seemed an eternity from the time Jonas called until they heard the faint wail of a siren. 2 minutes later Troy knocked on the front door. Mira hurried to answer it. You again? Troy exclaimed as he recognized her as Jonas's visitor from the previous time out to the ranch. As he came through the door, he told Jonas, Man, I warned you not to have any house guests until we get this thing straightened out. Jonas, it's dangerous to have a girlfriend come visiting. He seemed more upset Jonas put someone in danger than he was about the shooting. The body is in the bedroom, and she shot him in self-defense. The piece she used it on the couch in the front room. There is a body in the horse barn. I'll show you. I have to unhitch the horses and turn them out. Come on. It's almost time to do the milking. While Troy checked the body in the bedroom, Jonas suited back up, took his rifle, and headed for the door. Troy caught up with him as he began to unhitch the horses from the wagon. He opened half of the big barn door and let the 2 animals inside for their treat of sorghum and cracked oats. He felt guilty the way he had neglected the 2 beasts, and he gave them extra large rations. Troy closed the door behind him and caught up with Jonas. Where's the other one? He asked. Through there. He pointed toward the door he used to sneak up on the first intruder. Suddenly, they heard a snowmobile engine start up and quickly fade into the distance. Jonas shoved Troy out of the way and jumped through the door into the other stock barn. The body was missing. Damnation. I shot the son of a bitch and I saw him drop. His guts were blown to hamburger. You know the damage a .44 soft nose does at close range. I had X'd the nose on all those slugs. I hit him in the belly with a dum-dum. It is is impossible for him to get back up and ride off on a snowmobile. There is no way he could have. Maybe you didn't hit him as dead center as you thought you did. Troy squatted down at the pool of blood on the floor. Troy could see signs of the shooting. The amount of pooled blood indicated the victim had either bled out or came close to it. I have to cover that blood before I let the milk cows in, Jonas told him. He grabbed a heavy blanket off the wall and covered the grisly remains of the shooting. Wait, this is a crime scene. You can't disturb it. Troy, I have some cows hurting to be milked. Now either give me a hand or get out of the way. Jonas hurried to the door into the feeder lot and let the cows in. While they crowded each other to find their own personal stalls, Jonas quickly dumped out the rations and locked the stanchions. He hurried into the milk room and came back with the necessary empty buckets. Troy took the bucket offered him and squatted down beside the cow at the farthest end of the line from Jonas. Nothing was said until Jonas finished stripping the last of the milk out of the last cow. He carried 2 buckets in and started the cream separator. As the cream was separated from the milk, Troy carried in the other 2. Then the small radio on his collar came to life. Troy, come in. Troy hurried outside to his prowl car and called in. A minute later, he hurried back into the milk room. You aren't going to believe this, but somebody on a snowmobile just crashed head-on into the emergency vehicle answering the call out here. He had a dead body tied over the back. Said body had a hole in it big enough to stick a fist in. I believe we just solved the mystery of the disappearing body. I told you I finalized the son of a bitch, Jonas said. We need to find out who they were. Did the one who ran the emergency vehicle survive? Jonas asked. Dispatch says the driver of the snowmobile lost half his skull when he had butted the front bumper. Troy took a deep breath. Look, Jonas, I don't make it a habit of interfering with a man's love life, but you better send your girlfriend home. This place is as dangerous as the target end of a firing range. My name is Mira Ford and I stay. I own a part of this ranch and it is now my home. Came her voice from the outside door. I just killed a man to protect myself and my home. I'm not going anywhere. Why in hell didn't you tell me? Troy demanded. He turned toward Mira. What do you know about what has been happening? I went back into the bedroom and looked at the one in the bedroom. I recognized him. He is one of the bunch Barry ran with. You get on your police radio and ask someone if the dead 2 that ran into the ambulance don't have New York police ID. Well, I was already informed they both have New York identities, and the one who was shot is one of the fugitives the FBI is looking for. I would be willing to bet the one in the house is also wanted. You can probably figure on a visit from the feds before long. They seem very anxious to talk to one of these clowns alive. Troy emphasized the word alive. He continued, you 2 have put the bad guys on the endangered species list. He laughed. Not that I'm complaining, mind you. Hell, Jonas, you are doing my work for me, and I still get paid for it. Look, Jonas said, changing the subject, Mira and I have to go into town to get a few things. With the emergency vehicle out of order, you want us to take the body in the house in with us? I can't authorize that, Jonas. There is supposed to be a state vehicle on its way with a forensics crew. We have to wait for them before we can go any place. Mira, why don't you and Troy go inside while I gather the eggs and feed the rest of the livestock? There's no use in you 2 getting any colder. Troy nodded and followed Mira into the house. Jonas finished the outside chores and returned to the house with a dozen eggs. As he arranged them in the egg tray, Mira laughed. Why is it your eggs taste so much better than the eggs I bought in the stores back east? The chicken's diet for one thing, Jonas answered. Again his pride showed in his voice. When chickens are grown and raised in captivity, cooped up all their lives and never allowed out of their small cages to run, certain bodily wastes are not completely eliminated. Our chickens are free-range raised except in the wintertime when I grain feed them. This gives them a better diet than the so-called scientific diet made from beef guts and whatever else is mixed into their rations, including the waste parts of already slaughtered chickens. Also, these eggs are fresher than you can buy in stores. Every egg our chickens lay is sold before I gather it. The store in Walden pays me better than wholesale for our eggs. If we go into meat chickens, it will be the same. The eggs have been the source of my beer money. Troy had noticed the our chickens remark and looked at Jonas, then Mira a little closer. He thought he saw something between them. His musings were cut short when a state emergency vehicle drove into the yard and parked. Jonas hurried to open the door. As the paramedics entered, another vehicle, a heavy SUV, drove into the yard. 3 men and a woman got out and hurried to the house. Before they could identify themselves, Jonas pointed, the body is in the bedroom. The newcomers went to the bedroom. Seconds later, the paramedics carried the body out and drove off. The oldest for the 4, a man close to 50 years of age, approached Troy. Talk to me, deputy, he said in a quiet voice. Not much to report, Troy told him. The 2 dead men tried to ambush Jonas here and weren't up to the job. They are both wanted by the FBI on felony charges. There was a 3rd man with the dead pair. He got away with 1 body, the one shot in the barn. caught that one on the radio. That would be the snowmobile that went head-on into the county ambulance. The woman in the group stepped forward. I was wondering if you could tell us why so many baddies out of New York City keep showing up around here. What are they after? She looked back and forth between Mira and Jonas with suspicion. As near as I can figure out, it is about buried treasure. Jonas told them of the local legends and Captain Ford and the missing map. Mira noted he never once mentioned a map had been found. A half hour later, the four left. Troy told Jonas, I'm on my way. What do you want to do about the wrecked snowmobile? I'll have to make payments, Jonas, but you know I'm good for it. Jonas smiled at his friend. I have $100 deductible on my insurance. Make certain the accident report says an unidentified person rammed the machine into the stone wall and left on foot. Also state in the report there were no witnesses. When the insurance company comes around and brings me a check, you cover the $50 and call it even. He turned to Mira. Get warm clothes on. We're going into Walden to make a few purchases. He watched Troy go out the front door, then began to suit up. We'll take your Jeep. I want to get it winterized. Put on new rubber and chains. I also want to see if a friend of mine might have a decent rifle and a smaller handgun for you. What do I need 2 guns for? I never shot a gun before in my life. She stared at him as if he were speaking a foreign language. Yes, you have. He contradicted her. No, I have not. I'm afraid of guns. He looked at her with exasperation and demanded in a testy voice. What did you kill that fool with today? A spit wad. Oh, well that one didn't count. Besides, I closed my eyes. All the time they talked, she kept shaking her head no. Troy looked hard at Mira and said, I'm out of here, and he hurried out the door. With exaggerated patience, Jonas explained, Mira, those people are after you. They want that map. They want you. They prefer you alive, but it appears they want you any way they can get you. That map is a fake and they want it. Why? What is hidden on a fake map important enough they are willing to kill for it? His eyes lit up. A look of excitement replaced the look of worry. Get dressed for the cold. We are going to town. Bring that money I gave you earlier. Hurry. Are you crazy? What are you talking about? She looked at him in alarm. Tell me what's going on. Hurry up and go put a parka on. Bring the map with you. He threw his own parka back on and hurried out to start the Ford. The engine would barely turn over. Jonas returned inside the house and brought out a 2-bulb heat lamp. He stuck the lamp up under the oil pan and turned it on. 10 minutes later, he tried the engine again. It started right up. He removed the heat lamp, turned it off, and replaced it in the house. Come on, he said. After the engine warmed up to operating temperature, he put the car in gear and backed away from the house. The 4-wheel drive slipped and slid a little, then straightened out and accessed the already driven over snow. Jonas was careful as he drove toward the road. He stayed along the side of the road all the way into Walden. They met no one and no one passed them. Their first stop was the garage. A man in greasy overalls came to the door to greet them. Jonas, he nodded to Mira. What can I do for you folks? Open the big door and let me drive inside. I want 5 new snow tires. Balance them and give me a set of chains. Change the oil, plugs and coolant. Tune it. We're going over to the Emporium and get a few things from Simon. The man nodded. He hurried to open the big roll-up door while Jonas restarted the Jeep. The Emporium was across the street and down a half block. An older, somewhere in his 60s man, hurried to greet them as they entered. Jonas, come right in. Please buy something. Business is so bad, even the shoplifters have started to go elsewhere. I'm so close to closing my doors forever you would not believe it. Simon, ever since I first started to come in here, you have been about ready to close your doors forever. You sold me my first new pair of boots on credit when I was 14 and my first Stetson a year later. You will close your doors at the same time as the second coming of Christ. Jonas, don't you talk to this poor man like that. Running a business, even a small business like this, is no easy task. Mira did not like the way Jonas talked to this old man. Where did you find such a rarity as this beautiful one? She is as a rose in the desert surrounded by cactus. This one. Brains, beauty and spirit. Rose in the desert, my butt. You meant a rose in the middle of a bunch of pricks. I know you, Simon Feldman. Take your bull down the road, or I'll tell Nora you have been hitting on the female customers. Jonas looked down at the old man affectionately. Well, just so he doesn't start hitting on the male customers, I'll let the old capon try to crow like a rooster, came a female voice from the back of the store. An attractive woman in her late 50s came out and hugged Jonas. You get more beautiful every time I see you. Nora, leave this old fart and run off with me, Jonas greeted her. She looked at Mira, assessing her closely. And who is this, Jonas? She is gorgeous. Mora made gorgeous sound like a nasal godjust. You're from the Bronx? Mira exclaimed. I thought I heard a touch of Upper Manhattan in your voice. Mora smiled and told her in a confidential voice. Yeah, Bronx all the way until this wild and adventurous madcap Jew swept me off my feet and brought me out here to the wild. Wild West, where he said the cowboys and native Indians all feared the kosher kid. She looked affectionately at her slightly shorter husband. Nora, these two nice people came in here to buy something. Please let them spend their money. Simon's face betrayed the greedy sound of his words as he smiled at his wife. Jonas got down to business. Simon, do you have any of those white Arctic snowsuits left? Mira and I may be spending time outside in the cold. I want us protected. In a 48 extra long, I only have the one in your size. It comes in mottled white camouflage only. Simon turned to his wife. Nora, show this young lady the white snow sweets. Make certain she is fitted properly. But, Mira tried to protest as Nora led her away toward the back of the store. She looked at Jonas and shrugged. Okay, Simon got down to business. What is going on around here, Jonas? You shot cops from New York City that the FBI wanted to arrest. You came in here with a beautiful girl that can only be the one those cops were looking for. Give. Oh man, I don't know where to start. You know one of that bunch killed Harold when I sent him out to watch things at my place. Jonas's voice took on a mean edge. I don't know what the whole thing is about, but I intend to find out. He looked down at the floor and shook his head. You remember all those old tales about a Spanish gold mine? Well, there is more to it than we thought. Simon interrupted with an impatient gesture. Jonas, Colorado has more lost gold mine stories than an old woman has complaints. Get to the point. Well, it seems there was supposed to be a cache of gold buried up on my ranch back in the early to mid-1800s, the Reyes expedition. The gold may have been mined locally. I have a map on a piece of very old parchment. It shows a cave where the gold is supposed to be. He stopped and stared hard at his friend. We found the cave. So, and what about the gold? The mocking grin on Simon's face said he did not believe Jonas found any gold. We did not have time to go looking for any gold. I had to get back to do the milking and other chores. Jonas saw Simon's grin. Well, you know me. Chores always come first, he said in a defensive voice. Well, at least you haven't gone gold crazy. The old man peered hard up into Jonas's eyes. Okay, tell me the rest. You left something out. Like why you described the map as being on old parchment, rather than an old map on parchment, for instance. So tell the rest of the story. He folded his arms and waited. Jonas took a deep breath and continued. The damned map was printed with a laser printer. The thing looks real as hell, and we even found the cave it showed. We know that much is real. So why go to that much trouble unless you want authentic? Suppose 200-year-old laser-printed treasure maps are not quite authentic. I think there is a hidden message on that parchment or a map in invisible ink or something. On the other hand, with what I have learned about Myra's dad, it might be some sort of big con he started and then died before he could finish it. He was my captain and a damn fine officer. Yesterday, I learned he was on the run from the law and joined the army to get away. Even there, he had a couple of cons going on. Jonas looked Simon straight in the eyes and said, right now about the only two people in this world I trust are you and Mora. What about me, Jonas? Mira asked in a hurt voice. She had come back and stood listening to the two men talk. Don't take this wrong, but I don't know you. You can't build a lifetime of trust in just a couple of days. All I know about you is what you have told me. How much of it is true? I have no way of knowing. Right now I can tell you I won't harm you or try to cheat you. But do you know if what I just said is true? Yes, she exploded. I go with what I feel inside, and that is to trust you. Before you get too carried away, remember what you told me about your father. You knew him a long time. Jonas felt like he was talking into a great void with no one listening. He relented slightly. I do trust you a little. I trusted you not to shoot me with my own piece. But Mira, before I place my whole trust in you, I have to know you a lot better. You want pretty words, head back to the East Coast. You will get nothing but straight talk from me. Okay. Reluctantly, she nodded her head yes. Suddenly, she blurted out, if it would do any good, I would burn that damned map and everything to do with it. I finally met a real man, and he won't trust me. She stopped, startled at her own words, and slapped her hand to her mouth, as if Top stopped the words from coming out, the words she had already spoken. Trust her, Jonas, trust her. I feel she has a good heart. Laura placed an arm around Myra's shoulders and hugged. Simon broke the thick silence. I got a suit in your size. What else you need, boy? He gave Jonas a look of sympathy. I want a 50 caliber sniper quality rifle, a night scope, and 3 boxes of precision ammo. Also give me a 32 caliber short brush rifle and a 22 caliber 9-shot revolver on a small frame for her hand. We'll need 3 boxes each for both of those weapons. He stopped and thought, you still have that 10 to 30 power sniper scope? You going to war? Simon looked at his friend, worried at the answer. We do have the law around here. I'm not going to the war, Simon. The war is coming to me. Right now I want to make certain I'm on the winning side. Now what do you have that comes close to a sniper's rifle? Jonas, what are you looking for? I got a .6 that is accurate up to 500 yards. Then the slug drifts out of the dead zone. I can let you have it for 180, tax included. Jonas realized his friend was offering him the gun at cost. Damn it, Simon. When I was a kid heading for trouble, you sold me my first 22. You charged me full price and made me pay it off. No excuses. You do me the same today as you did then. Besides, I want something dead nuts for at least a half mile. Say 50 caliber, 7-shot clip, bolt action. What you got along those lines? Jonas, you know what you were asking for? Simon looked at him like he had gone crazy. You want a Momser you can blow a hole in a tank with it? Simon, you do not go bear hunting with a fly swatter. Jonas smiled quietly at his friend. What have you got? A reluctant Simon told him, I got a used Barrett 50 caliber I bought off a down on his Luck Ranch hand last year. It had 20 bullets and 3 clips. It has no pedigree, so I never listed it on my inventory. Now he said it was accurate for about 1,000 yards. But you know how those guys lie. It is maybe what you want. Restraining his anxious feeling as best he could, Jonas told him in a tense voice, let me see it. If the piece was in decent shape, it was just what the doctor ordered. He followed Simon to the back of the store and waited while the gun vault was unlocked. Simon brought the rifle, wrapped in a heavy blanket. He laid the bundle on the back counter and with a show of reluctance unwrapped it. At the very first sight, Jonas knew he was looking at an old friend. Going by outward appearances, it seemed to be in perfect condition. With an almost reverence, he lifted the rifle to his shoulder and sighted at an imaginary target. I'll take it. How much? $2,000 for all your purchases. Give me whatever you have with you, and I'll put the rest on your bill. Throw in 2 boxes of whatever ammo you have for the big boy, and we'll call it $3,000 cash. That Barrett will bring $3,000 on the open market in good used condition, even without any paperwork. This baby has barely been test fired. You have $3,000 with you? Simon asked. I got a little found money from selling some beef and pork. Jonas grinned and added, 3 big ones okay with you? Simon nodded his agreement. You act like you were familiar with that gun. You ever shoot one before? Old friend, that ranch hand had no idea what he had. He must have stolen it someplace. I have made head shots at 1,000 yards with another one just like this one. Up to 1.5 miles, anything you hit is gone. At over 1.5 miles, the trajectory degrades fast. Simon looked at him and asked carefully, I had shots at a half mile away from the target? What did you do in the army? You never talk about your army days. I was a sniper, Jonas told him flatly. I was damn good at what I did. I hope I still have what it takes. Until this is all over, I intend to be careful, real damned careful. Jonas turned toward the other side of the store where Mira and Laura were talking. We have to get going. We'll see you when we get back to town. You need anything, just give me a call. He gathered up their purchases except for the clothing, told Mira, pay the man, and walked toward the front door. Mira grabbed up the rest and followed. The Ford was outside waiting for them. You start it up and wait for me. I'll go in and pay the bill. She nodded and said nothing. She watched through the front window of the garage while Jonas returned inside. He wrote a check, handed it to the mechanic, and returned to the Jeep. As he got in on the passenger side, he told her, stay to the outer edge of the road and don't go over 25. There are too many strangers around, and some of them drive too fast for the road conditions. That ambulance driver knew better than to drive in the center like he did. That fool on the snowmobile either panicked or didn't know what he was doing with that snowmobile. We want to play it safe and get home in one piece. Are you sure you can trust me? She asked bitterly. Okay, so that is what this silence is all about. Let me explain reality to you. He reached eye on the back seat and brought the heavy caliber rifle up front. He slipped a clip into place and threw the bolt back. There was a snick sound and a shell was levered into the chamber. Well? She asked. Go on. I barely know you. You are good looking, damn good looking. You have a nice singing voice and you know things I was never aware I didn't know until I met you. You're easy to talk to. And you have guts. You were able to shoot that man when most of you hothouse flowers would have wilted. He turned in the seat to look at her more clearly. That's all I know about you. You show up out of nowhere, make a dramatic entrance into my life, and present papers that could be forgeries. Well, how do I earn this trust? She asked sarcastically. Do I have to walk through fire, say a secret password, what? Trust is something you learn over time. It doesn't happen overnight, he said, taking a deep breath. I thought I knew your father. We fought together in several battles. I carried him across dangerous ground where I could have made better time alone and not gotten shot. I saved him and ended up wounded, out of the army. That was my reward for saving him. And now, according to you, he lied to me. After everything we went through together. She spoke softly. I'm sorry. I never lived in your world. I guess I'm sheltered. Getting a master's in business administration doesn't prepare you for this kind of reality. She paused, then added, well, not this kind of reality, anyway. They rode in silence for a while. Suddenly, he patted her on the inner thigh. She flinched, and the car veered sharply. He immediately pulled his hand back as if it had been burned. Ah, sorry, he muttered in embarrassment. I wasn't trying to invade your space. I was just trying to reassure you. Who? She exclaimed, you better not do that again while I'm driving. You almost caused a wreck. I didn't realize you were as ticklish as you are. He sounded at loss for words. Jonas, she told him in a serious voice, that was not a tickle. Don't do that again unless you mean it. That especially goes if I am driving. She laughed nervously. Yeah, he answered shortly. They drove the rest of the way in embarrassed silence. As they came to the driveway from the road to the house, Jonas told her, stop. Let me go ahead and look around. If you hear any shooting, even one shot, get the hell out of here and go back to town and get hold of Troy. Then go stay with Simon and Maura. She nodded and didn't answer. Jonas opened the door on his side and slid out. He carried his new rifle chest high in a horizontal grip as he waded through the snow. He slipped into the cattle barn, cut through to the shop and out again. Silent as a wraith, he slipped through the snow, looking for freshly made tracks not drifted in by the wind. He nudged open the back door with his foot and searched the house. Then, after the search was complete, Jonas stepped out on the porch. He waved for Mira to come in and re-entered the house. Jonas added another split log to the fireplace and waited. Mira entered through the front door, her arms full of purchases from town. Jonas passed her as he went out to the Jeep, which was now parked more conventionally in front of the house. He carried the weapons and ammunition inside, laying them out on the kitchen table. Mira removed her outer clothing and stood in front of the fire in her jeans and a simple t-shirt. Jonas hung his parka and thermal pants on hooks by the door and stood in his thermal underwear bottoms. Once again, she admired his solid frame. She laughed and called into the kitchen, God, you're so meticulous. Even your muscles are perfectly aligned. He snorted and shook his head at her comment, then told her, get in here. I want to give you your first lesson in gun care. Lesson 1. If you shoot it, you clean it. Lesson 2. If it's a new weapon, strip it down and check it out. Lesson 3. Know your weapon. What happened to Lesson 2? She asked. In the way things are now, there is no time for any Lesson 2s. You either learn Lesson 1 or you die, he told her in a flat voice with no inflection at all. For the next hour, he showed her how to take her rifle and handgun apart and reassemble them. Tomorrow we start shooting lessons. You ever shoot before? No, I hate guns. I stayed away from them, far away from them, all my life. She shook her head and added, it seems I have to learn about them to stay alive, so I'll learn. But I will not learn to like them. Jonas smiled and nodded his approval. Good thinking. Gun nuts are crazy. Guns are tools, nothing more and nothing less. He laughed. Did you know the most conservative people you could ever hope to meet are the members of the NRA? They take their shooting serious, real serious. They also take gun safety and gun courtesy just as serious. I don't care anything about a lot of the sports shooting events. They never did interest me. A haunted look came to his eyes and passed as he added, I saw too much shooting already. He put the gun kits away and headed for the bedroom. He undressed and crawled under the covers, falling asleep almost immediately. In the middle of the night, he felt the bed shift. He bolted upright, ready for anything, until he saw it was Mira. I'm scared, she whispered. He shook his head, thinking to himself, this is unreal, and lay back down, trying to go back to sleep. The next morning, he woke up at his usual time, but something was different. Mira was pressed against his back, and he could feel an overwhelming sense of discomfort. Using all his willpower, he quietly slipped out of bed and headed to the bathroom. The cold shower woke him up, but it didn't exactly help with the discomfort. He muttered to himself as he dried off, feeling like it wasn't working. Quietly, he dressed in his thermals and gently shook her shoulder. Time to get up, he said softly. The bathroom's free. After adding more wood to the fireplace and securing the metal screen, he moved into the kitchen to start breakfast and set the table. He realized how much he enjoyed having someone else around. It felt good. For the first time, he thought of Mira as someone he might want to get to know better. She entered the kitchen in her new thermals. Hi, she said, a soft blush coloring her cheeks. Thank you. Most guys would have tried something last night. I realized you meant what you said, he replied, offering a warm smile. I don't take advantage. Not that I didn't want to, I sure did. But until you tell me otherwise, I'll respect your boundaries. Different, she said softly and looked at the floor. Well, damn. He gave a half laugh. You picked a bad time to tell me something different. We have chores that need to come first. He thought for a moment, then decided not to correct himself. He gestured toward her usual chair and said, sit. She sat and watched him finish preparing breakfast. The scrambled eggs were light and fluffy, the hash browns lightly seasoned with a touch of cayenne, salt, and pepper. The breakfast steaks were perfectly cooked, medium rare, broiled over a small grill. Dig in, he told her. Today, you're going to learn about milking and gathering eggs. He took a bite of meat and began chewing. You cook like a chef and you're good looking too, she told him, grinning. What more could a man wish for? I'll take that as a joke, he told her and turned on his food once more. His ears had turned red. Jonas, this is no joke. I am attracted to you. You are strong, steady, and handsome in a tough Mickey Rourke sort of way. Also, you don't go out of your way to play the macho role with me. I am very much attracted to you. Like you told me once, you can take that to the bank and cash it. Jonas cut her off. Let's continue this interesting conversation after the work is done. He rose and placed his dishes in the dishwasher and went into the living room to finish dressing. She hurried to eat the rest of the food on her plate and placed her dishes in the dishwasher and turned it on. She joined him. The wind blew in soft gusts, raising a mist of powdered snow that softened the appearance of the outbuildings. Jonas went first, carrying his .45 caliber bolt-action rifle. Although he did not expect trouble, he wanted to be prepared. The morning went fast as he helped her milk her first cow. She laughed at the antics of the chickens when they went to the milk trough to get their share of the skim milk. The hogs were another source of amazement and amusement. Enjoy it while you can, Jonas told her. After the new wears off, it becomes work. Until we have a couple of hired hands or so, the ranch comes first, no matter what. You try go to bed at 9 every evening, no matter what is on television or how much fun you are having at the time. You get up at 4:30 every morning, no matter how bad your hangover. That is why I drink very little, just a few beers now and then. Well, if it is as bad as all that, why do you ranch? Mira asked crossly. His call to reality irked her. Because it is the only life I can imagine for me. To build a bigger operation, you have to sacrifice in the beginning. Next year, with any luck, we will sell off a few head of beef and buy more calves to add to our natural increase. Year after next, I plan for every animal on this property to be ours. I also intend to expand the pork and the poultry. Beefalo might be a good investment, perhaps even yaks. A friend has been experimenting with a cross between Brahmas and buffalo. I want to try the same thing with my Black Angus mix as the crossbreed. The idea is to develop a faster-growing, larger meat animal. He snugged his hood tight. Let's get some coffee and rest for a minute, then go for a ride. We'll take the snowcat. I want to cover more territory. As soon as they returned to the house, Jonas poured the last of the coffee in the pot into 2 mugs and started a new batch brewing. He brought 2 rifle scabbards into the kitchen. Myra's short-barreled .32 caliber brush gun was slipped into the smaller scabbard. The big sniper rifle went in the larger one. He placed them on the sink counter and brought out the big thermos. As soon as the preparations were all made, he sat and took the first sip of his coffee. Mira was fascinated the way Jonas kept moving from one task to another. Jonas never slowed and never seemed to hurry as he did all the small tasks that needed doing. He seemed to be the perfect perpetual motion machine. Jonas, it makes me tired to just watch you, she told him. You say, let's rest, and then find 3 more things to do before you sit down. She marveled again at the way he never ran out of energy and never seemed to hurry. Actually, if it had not been for all the trouble those clowns brought down on me, this would be a pretty slack time of year. There is one thing I forgot to tell you though. This ranch is actually 2 ranches separated by a 50 feet wide finger of land that belongs to some California cattle outfit. They have been trying to make me pay dearly to get that little slice. I won't pay them and they have threatened to sue me because I keep trespassing when I bring my cattle across. They even tried to fence me off once, so I drove the cattle through their fine new fence. What they really want is half of our South Ranch. Half of it is fair graze in the summer, and I get 2 cuttings of hay off of the other half of it. All told, we own 4,000 acres of land. Part of the South Ranch is limited use land. We own it, we pay taxes on it, and I filed the homestead rights on it. But we can only use it for graze. Every acre of the home ranch, that's this parcel of land, is all ours. We have full unlimited use of it all. So right after spring thaw begins, we move all the cattle off of this range over to the South Ranch and graze them there. Then we get our 2 cuttings off of the rest of the land and use that hay to help get us through the winter. Our first priority, though, will be to get this New York bunch off of our necks and get on with our lives. We actually are sitting on a gold mine and don't even have a shovel to dig with right now. And I don't mean that supposed gold cash. Let's get to work. She got a funny feeling in the pit of her stomach as she watched him carry both rifles out to the snowcat and stash them. She wondered to herself how much of the danger he anticipated was real and how much was exaggerated or imagined. Then she remembered the man she shot yesterday. God, this is like living in a nightmare. Why won't they just go away and leave us alone? She knew the answer. She and Jonas had something the others wanted. The fact she did not know what it was made it all the worse. Right then, if Mira had known what the people who were hounding her and Jonas wanted, she would have given it to them. She hurried to climb up in the small snowcat and sit in the passenger seat. As soon as Mira was in and secure, he engaged the clutch and they began to move. The steel blades embedded in the rubber treads grabbed into the icy snow and pulled them forward. This land of ours is beautiful as well as treacherous. Take nothing for granted and keep a sharp watch out." She nodded without answering and looked out at the world of snow and ice and shadows of trees. The overcast sky brought a gloom to everything that seemed vaguely threatening to Mira. "It is a gray and white world, all dead and still." She repeated the thought to herself, a gray and white world, all dead and still. She shuddered at the bleakness of her thoughts. As if to contradict her dark thoughts, Jonas said, "Look over there. See that elk? He has been feeding pretty good. There's still plenty of grass under the snow for him to be in that good of shape." He steered toward the big animal. The elk took one look at the oncoming snowcat, turned and retreated back into the trees. All thoughts of death and danger left her mind as she said in awe, "He was so beautiful. You don't let anybody in here to hunt, do you?" She hated the thought that some hunter could come up here and kill such a magnificent animal. "I have this whole area posted for another reason. Damned hunters kill anything that moves. They shoot cattle, horses, and each other. If the bushes move, they shoot and get all sorry when it wasn't what they thought." Mira was not too certain he was joking or not. "You're putting me on, aren't you?" His face clouded over at the mere thought of those he considered useless Easterners. "No. All too often when those fools from back east come up here they head out into the woods and blaze away. Last year, while I was talking to one of the game wardens up here, a clown came past with an old mule of mine tied down in the back of his SUV. I recognized it was my mule at first glance. The old boy came with the place, and I let him end out his days grazing around the house. I asked the dude what he had there, and he told me he had shot a mule deer. I was so mad I almost dragged the idiot out of his fancy car to beat the hell out of him. Then what he said next made me change my mind. He told us he saw that big mule deer in some farmer's front yard, and when he took his first shot, he broke a window. So he shot again and hit the mule deer. Then, to add insult to injury, he left $20 to pay for a $150 picture window. "Oh my God," Mira exclaimed. Jonas snorted and continued, "Bill Jeffries. The warden arrested him on the spot for trespassing, hunting in a restricted area, hunting in a posted area, and malicious and wanton destruction of property. He told the fool that mule was my prize show animal that I kept fenced in my front yard so nothing would happen to it. Then he introduced me. Well, what happened?" Mira was positive this was not a tall tale. "I said I would press charges, and the dude was hauled off to jail. In justice court the next morning, he was scared, real scared. Judge Peters asked him how he pled, and he started to babble and carry on. He offered to pay for the animal and told us all how sorry he was." Jonas stopped to chuckle at the memory. "Go on, what happened?" "I agreed to take his nice new loaded with everything SUV in trade and drop all charges. Judge Peters didn't know the SUV was brand new and barely broken in. Now was he aware the mule was an old bag of bones I did not have the heart to shoot. He fined the guy all the traveler's checks he had on him and ordered him to make out a bill of sale to me for the SUV. The price was $1 and a show mule. I still have the bill of sale framed and hanging on the wall. That is one trophy I don't want to lose." "Well, where's the SUV?" she asked. "I didn't see one anywhere since I have been here." "You were sitting in it. I traded it for this snowcat and a snowmobile. I got the snowcat and 2 snowmobiles. Then a certain game warden got himself one of the new snowmobiles." He smiled at the memory. "Remind me not to do anything dumb around you," she told him. "You already have," he told her. "So from now on be real careful around me." She was relieved he had a smile on his face. He was much more fearsome than Barry in many ways. Jonas drove along the edge of the old growth pine forest. It seemed so strange to her how the trees all grew up the mountain, just so far and no further. Mira gasped as they headed up what seemed an impossibly steep slope. When they crested the top of the hill and the snow cap became level again, she sighed her deep relief. At last they stopped at a sheer cliff. Jonas got out and motioned for her to do the same. He walked over to the edge and took a slow look across the country they had just crossed over. She could see the twin tracks the snowcat left in the snow, twin lines that seemed to draw closer and closer together until they became a single faint line. Then that line, too, disappeared into the mist in the distance. "All the country you see before you is our domain." He pointed to the south. "The South Range starts on the other side of those tracks there. That is the disputed strip of land that splits our 2 ranches. That California bunch has their main holdings up north of San Francisco and only run a feeder operation over there." He pointed to the southeast. "They use that strip as a shortcut to the county road into Walden." He frowned and spat as if the very mention of the Californians left a bad taste in his mouth. "Let's get back into the cat and head on down the east slope. I want to see how those cattle weathered the storm. I intend to move them across to the South Ranch to finish the winter there. When late spring roundup comes, we need to have them where the Texas owners can come in and haul their animals away without disturbing the rest of the operation." Suddenly Jonas felt a flutter in the air, followed by the sound of a rifle shot in the distance. "Quick, get in the cat," Jonas yelled and sprinted toward the machine. Mira was frozen to the spot where she stood. Jonas doubled back, grabbed her, and threw her bodily into the passenger's seat. He ran around to the other side and vaulted up into the cab. He released the handbrake and threw the cat in gear at the same time. The small 50-horse engine squalled as he raced toward the southeast corner of the plateau. The cat nosed forward over the lip of land and dropped 3 feet before it made firm purchase in the snow. Mira screamed in fear and excitement as they raced down the steep incline. Halfway down, Jonas began to angle to the left in a gradual arc, never easing up on the gas. At the bottom of the slope, he saw a human figure race toward a snowmobile. The figure jumped on and started to race away. Jonas slammed the cat to a stop, jumped out, and grabbed his new rifle. He snapped the bolt open and closed once, raised the sniper rifle to his shoulder, and fired once. The snowmobile, far in the distance, flipped up into the air and came back down on its side. The person aboard the snowmobile flew through the air and landed in the snow. Jonas slid the rifle back in its sheath and hopped back into the cat. He hurried to the downed ambusher and stopped. While still 10 feet away from the downed body, Jonas stopped. "Get your gun and cover me," he ordered. He proceeded with caution as he approached his quarry. Just as Jonas drew close, the stranger rolled over, aimed a heavy Colt revolver at Jonas, and exclaimed, "Hello, sucker." A shot rang out, and the man fell back, a hole blown through his chest. A red stain formed. "Hello to you too," Jonas answered the corpse. He bent down and removed the handgun from the corpse's grasp and stood. "You did good there, babe," he said over his shoulder. He sighed, bent over, and lifted the dead man up and carried him a few feet to the snowcat. He heaved once and brought the body up level with the bed on the back of the snowcat. He removed his gloves long enough to lash the body into place. He put his gloves back on and got into the cat. "I found his rifle and stuck it under the seat. I'll hang on to mine just in case," Mira told him. "Damn it, Jonas, I am still scared, but I'm so angry right now. I want to shoot someone else. They have no right, no right, no right at all." She started to sob. "Damn them all." "Babe," Jonas glanced over at her and straight ahead again. "I'm glad you kept your eyes open this time. By the way, I think you're a natural shooter." "What do you mean?" she asked in a weary voice. For the moment, Jonas had distracted from her near hysteria. "Well, look, 2 shots with 2 unfamiliar weapons, and you never had any gun training. I'd say you were either a natural-born shooter or lucky, one or the other." "I vote for natural." Jonas thought for a moment, then said, "I'm the one who was lucky. If you hadn't shot, I might be dead about now." She didn't answer. They rode in silence out to the county road. Jonas aimed the snowcat toward Walden and opened the throttle wide open. As they got close to town, passers-by saw the grisly load and turned around to follow. Jonas called the sheriff's office on his cell phone and told the dispatcher what he was bringing into them. Troy and another deputy were waiting for them when they pulled up. "Jonas, the FBI has already been called in. This is just too much for us to handle. Bring your weapons and come on inside. The 2 agents who have been assigned to handle the case are in the office. Bring your weapons and come on in," he repeated. Jonas nodded and turned back to the snowcat. He lifted out the 3 rifles. "You bring the handguns, babe," he told Mira. She quietly nodded and retrieved the attacker's Colt and the small handgun Jonas bought her the previous evening. Troy led the way back to an office where 2 strangers sat inside waiting. One jumped up in alarm as Jonas entered carrying the weapons. He deposited the 3 rifles on the desk one at a time. "This," he said, holding up a 30-06, "is what the dead one out there tried to snipe at us with." He hefted up Myra's small brush rifle. "This is the one Mira shot him with when he tried to shoot me with this." He took the large revolver from Mira and laid it on the desk. "She got him with 1 hip shot at 10 feet. Now this is the one I shot the dead man's snowmobile with to prevent him from escaping. 1 shot at about 3/8 of a mile right through the engine." "Bull," exclaimed one of the 2 strangers. "Why don't you drop the shucks attitude and tell us what really happened?" Mira snarled. "You, Dumbo, are you supposed to be the mean a-hole? Then you must be the nice one you're supposed to confide in, right?" Jonas was surprised at her language. He said nothing, waiting for the response from the other agent. "Actually, Miss Ford, I'm the tougher one. We don't have any soft types around here. Now let's get to the point. What really happened out there? Shots through a snowmobile engine from half a mile? That doesn't add up unless you had that big rifle." He nodded toward the Barrett, set on a tripod with a serious scope. "Even then, hitting a moving target at nearly 1,000 yards is hard to believe. I could make that shot at a mile with a tripod and that setup," Jonas said, his smile cold. "Nobody challenges me around here. I'm that good. Your people tried to recruit me after Afghanistan." Silence fell. Then Troy cut in, dryly. "Now that we're done measuring egos, can we get back to the real issue?" Mira smirked. Oh, no doubt Jonas wins. These two just like to act bigger than they are. Jonas chuckled, catching himself before it turned into full laughter. Troy's right. Let's wrap this up. He faced the agents. Want me to take you to the site? We better move. I've got cows to milk and chores to handle. You'll go when we say. The so-called tough agent pushed again. I'm not impressed with your tough guy routine. Jonas turned to Troy. Head over to Buckhorn and ask Ed to send someone to handle the milking. I might be held up. Mira, go with him. Then, back to the agents, his voice calm but sharp. Careful where you go swinging your weight around. This isn't a game. As Mira turned to leave, the other agent grabbed her shoulder. No, you don't. You stay here until. His voice was cut short as Jonas grabbed his larynx and squeezed. As the man let go of Mira, Jonas spun him around to act as a shield between him and the other agent who had started to draw his sidearm. With a sharp shove, Jonas pushed the one agent into the other, so both agents ended up in a pile on the floor. He stepped on the one agent's wrist and jerked the automatic from his grasp. He aimed it between the agent's eyes. Do you know how close I am to blowing your brains all over your partner? Don't do it, man. One of them said. Jonas, Troy warned. Without looking behind him, Jonas said in a conversational tone of voice, put that cheap thing back in its holster, Troy. If I wanted these two dead, they would already be dead. Here, catch. He turned and tossed the government-issue handgun in an underhand throw to Troy. He turned back to the two FBI men. Now I will cooperate with you in any reasonable way I can. But both of you, can the bull and just do your job. Someone wants something from Mira and I. We don't know what it is, and we would like to find out what is they feel is worth so many attempts on our lives. He stood back and let them get up. What in hell are you? The agent without the injured throat asked. They both looked at Jonas in something akin to horror. He had run them through the ringer and was not breathing hard. Until then they considered themselves among the elite. I am a man who wants to be left in peace. I will fight for that right. I want to raise my cows, sell them, and hopefully, someday, raise my children. He looked at the pair. I am going to go pick up my lady, and we are going back to the ranch. If you have business with me, legitimate business that is, come out to the ranch. I'm going home. Jonas, how do you plan on getting there? Troy asked. One of the deputies tried to back your snowcat up, and the thing kicked off the right track. What did you do? Drive it off a cliff? Damn near, Jonas told him. You know the mesa are near my south ranch? Troy nodded wearily. Well, I drove almost headfirst down off the southeast side after we got shot at. If you want to go out there, you can take the county road out to that strip of land and come straight in that way. Just follow the tracks and read the sign. Jonas turned and left. Nobody argued with him. He walked down the street to the Buckhorn. Mira and Ed were talking. At the other end of the bar, an extremely heavy woman sat on two bar stools, one under each cheek of her butt. Mira looked up, glanced at the woman, and then at Jonas. I see you were kidding. I'll do the cooking from now on. We'll eat lots of veggies. Jonas looked at her for a moment, puzzled at what she was talking about. Then he remembered he had told her a few of the local women needed two bar stools because of their dietary practices. We need to find a way home. The snow cat just got messed up. I drove it too hard off that plateau. What plateau is that, Jonas? Ed asked. Jonas explained about the shooting and his crazy ride down the slope in pursuit of the shooter. I know that place. I used to go elk hunting up near there before the game department closed it to hunters. Jonas, that is a 45-degree slope. You're telling me you rode straight down that sucker? Jonas smiled. Well, I didn't feel I had much of a choice. He articulated each word with care. Someone took a shot at us. I did not know if there were others who had us in their sights, and I wasn't about to take a chance. Besides, there is enough back drag on the tracks on a snowcat to give me a little maneuverability. Just as soon as the slope flattened out some, I veered in a wide arc until I was running crossways with the slope. Then I stopped. The clown tried to shoot me, and Mira explained to him why he shouldn't. I have a fine partner here, Jonas told the bartender proudly. And she's all woman, to boot. He took a sip of his beer Ed had poured when he first entered. Mira blushed at the not unwelcome, but unexpected praise. Jonas draped an arm over her shoulder and gave her a light squeeze. Thrills and other feelings she had never experienced before shot through her. These new emotions made her feel vulnerable, and she was not certain she liked that. Then another thought came to her. Damn it. He makes me feel like I am more than a quickie piece. He makes me feel like a real woman, to be desired and cherished. He makes me feel I am someone of value. She fought the tears that tried to come and rubbed her face against his side. Jonas turned his head to look at her. I think we need to bring in some extra help, for sure. There's way too much going on right now to try to go it alone anymore. I wanted to hold off hiring somebody else until after I bought a few more calves at spring auction. Then I knew I'd have to hire someone. As it stands right now, if I got laid up, everything would come apart on us. Ed told Jonas. I planned to give Blaine Martin a few days' work while he tried to get something steady. They got a 3-year-old, and Blaine was let go by that California bunch next to you. You could get him and his wife reasonable, and Blaine is steady. Reasonable help is not loyal. I'll pay going wage and expect good work. Jonas looked at Mira. Okay with you? She looked back at him and nodded, surprised to be let in on the decision-making. When you see Blaine, tell him to come talk to us, Jonas told Ed. Ed looked toward the back storage room and yelled, Hey Blaine, come meet your new boss. Jonas blinked as the storage room door opened and a young man in his early 20s hurried to join them. He stood slightly less than 6 feet and was well put together. Hi, Jonas, he greeted his new boss. Jonas nodded and got right down to business. Why did they let you go over there? He asked in an even voice. The foreman kept hitting on Anita and I told him to stop and he'd run us off. He won't even pay us what we got coming. He looked down at the floor. Mira nudged Jonas and nodded her head yes when he looked at her. $1,000 a month is all I can afford right now for the two of you. You take some of the load off of me on the chores and Anita will help out with the house and the light chores. You got away out to the ranch. Yes, sir, my old pickup and our motor home. I think I got enough gas left in them to get out there. Blaine paused and hesitated. We got a young one, 3 years old. That a problem? Well, not unless he eats too much, Jonas answered with a straight face. Here's a 20, he said as he pulled out his wallet. He handed the money to Blaine. Get some gas and you two take over the bunkhouse. You are on the payroll as of right now. Head on out and get settled in. We should be an hour or so behind you. Yes, sir, Blaine grinned and answered. He hurried away to tell his wife the good news. Jonas paid for his and Myra's drinks. I have to go over to the garage and get someone to fix the snowcat. It threw a track. You want to come along? Mira nodded and slid off her stool. They zipped up before they stepped outside into the cold. You know, Jonas, this is definitely not a stroll in the park, she told him as they stepped outside. Jonas made arrangements to have the snowcat repaired and asked around for a used snowmobile. He found a second-hand Polaris that met his needs. Jonas and the seller struck a deal and Jonas promised to bring in cash the next day. Jonas mounted up and Mira got on behind him. They stopped at the Emporium and entered. Simon rushed to greet him. Jonas hugged the small man and told him, that Barrett shoots dead nuts at a half-mile. He smiled down at his dearest friend. You ornery old fart. You taught me to fight and to shoot, and you did a damned good job of it. Then he noticed the 2 FBI men. He stepped back quickly and stood balanced, waiting for whatever happened next. What do you two want in here? These are my friends. The unspoken message in his words was he would kill to protect his friends. He's off, Morgan. Actually, we came to buy a few things and head back to Denver. We were given bad intel on you. It came from upstairs. He shook his head. I don't like that, not one bit. Our info on you was way off. It was as if your name was put on some loser's profile and forwarded on out to us as being you. He shut his mouth fast as if he said more than he meant to. He nodded toward Simon. Your friend told me how he helped raise you. He said, prone you can plug a grapefruit at 200 yards if you have a decent enough firearm. Jonas smiled quietly, surprised at the turnaround in attitude. Well, he said softly, when this trouble is resolved, maybe we can go shooting someday, or perhaps hunting next season. This year's limited season is about over, but there is always a next. If they wanted to start over, he was willing. What do you need, Jonas? Simon asked. Before he could answer, Laura ran out of the back and hugged Mira. Was you going to leave without saying goodbye, let alone hello? No, of course not. We just got here, Mira told her. Jonas wanted to say hello before we headed back to the ranch. We had more trouble and had to come into town to get it taken care of. She told Maura what happened when they rode out to look at the livestock on the South Ranch. What is the matter with those people? Maura gasped. Surely there is nothing on that land to be worth so many deaths. If they were a bunch of crazy Arabs, I can understand. But here, this is America. Such things don't happen in America. We came out here to get away from all such craziness. We don't know what is going on either, Jonas told her. I agree with you. Nothing, he emphasized the word. Nothing is worth this crap. I'm almost ready to give these scumsuckers whatever it is they want just to get some peace and quiet. I thought I left this over in the sandbox. He shook his head. After you take care of these two gentlemen, I have a few things I want to talk to you about. We got what we came for, the meaner FBI agent told them. There is one question I would like to ask you. He looked at Jonas. Cautiously, Jonas asked, what is it? What was that stuff you used on us? You seemed to be all over both of us at the same time. You never even raised a sweat and took us both out as if we were little children. Jonas looked at Simon and Maura. They all three grinned at each other. Jonas, you evil kid. You used Krav on these two gentlemen? Oh, well, yeah. It seemed a great idea at the time. Jonas laughed. Nothing's changed. It still works, too. He looked at the two FBI agents and smiled. What's Krav? The other agent asked. Used by someone properly trained. It is the most lethal form of hand-to-hand in the world. I once saw Simon here take out 3 would-be robbers in the time it took me to tell you about it. Both agents looked at Simon dubiously, waiting for the punchline to a joke he had not heard yet. The agent said, "And?" Mora smiled and told them, "Kravlev is the Israeli army's own method of hand-to-hand combat. It operates on the theory there are only two rules in combat. The first is, keep moving, and the second rule is win. Unlike the Oriental martial arts, or any of the sporting forms, there are no formal moves. It is aggression in its rawest form. Keep moving and win." Simon interrupted. When Jonas went into the army, his first training sergeant was hospitalized because he wouldn't stop picking on our boy here. They begged him to stay in the army and teach unarmed combat. The two agents nodded and started to leave. "I never knew Jews could fight," one told the other. They walked outside. "Oh, the smug ignorance of some people," Mora murmured. Simon smiled. "Here's the map, Jonas," Mira told him and handed him the manila envelope containing the map. He nodded as Mira handed him the map. "Is this some sort of joke?" Simon asked and started to hand the map back. "The ink on this thing is not 5 years old. I believe it to be nearly 8 or 10 years old. I believe the vellum is authentic and old as it seems to be. However, this is a beautiful forgery, one almost any expert would spot in minutes. Yet the map is fairly accurate, according to Jonas." She looked at Jonas. Jonas smiled and said, "You remember when I was a kid, how you told me about invisible inks? Mora, you gave me a copy of Poe's story about the purloined letter right around that time, remember?" She nodded. "I think the map was copied onto the surface of this old vellum to mislead anyone who did not know the key to it, and act as a guide to the person who did know. Nothing else makes any sense to me." "Ah yes, circles within circles." Simon seemed to become transformed into another person as he stared at the map. "Mora, will you please watch the store?" he asked his wife. She nodded yes at her husband's already turned back. "This is beautiful," Mira exclaimed as they entered the living quarters at the back of the store. She stared in amazement at an old walnut dining room set. The table and chairs, the antique china cabinet were all the works of a master woodworker. She lovingly caressed the dining table. "Come," Simon told her impatiently. He had no time for chit-chat. He led the way into another room and turned on the light. A small work table sat in the middle of the room. Racks of hand tools, ranging from wrenches to a small jeweler's lathe, rested along one wall. The old man carefully placed the map on the table. He removed a common infrared heat lamp from a peg on the wall and plugged it into the receptacle hanging down from the ceiling. He turned it on and placed it close to the vellum. He used the lamp to heat the map. "What are you looking for?" Mira asked. To her, Simon's actions were as arcane seeming as a sorcerer's spell. It seemed best to eliminate the most obvious first. "Heat-sensitive invisible ink," he told her. Many times common substances such as lemon juice were used to write invisible messages. Even during World War II, both sides in Europe employed such techniques. There seems to be nothing heat-responsive written here. Simon seemed to know every trick in the spy's handbook for writing and hiding messages. Ammonia fumes, bleach, blacklight, and all the rest. None gave up any results. "You might turn it over to the FBI, he told Jonas. "I don't think so," came the quick response. "Remember what that one agent said about the file they got on me? We used similar tricks in Afghanistan, including the times we went to the trouble to phony up a series of communiques we then let the opposition discover them." "I have a dumb question," Mira announced. "Okay," Jonas grinned at her. "You may ask one dumb question so long as it is totally off the wall. Go ahead." His patronizing smile irritated her. She wanted to be taken serious. Yet Jonas continually seemed to belittle her and discount her ideas. The bookkeeping was the only time he acknowledged she had something worthwhile to contribute. She controlled her urge to snap at him. Instead, she asked, "What if the map is a red herring and correct at the same time?" The grin left his face. "How so?" he asked intently. She felt a sense of a small victory as she continued. "I wonder if the map was purposely made to look a fake and at the same time be completely accurate?" Simon shook his head. "Too complicated." "Well, it is a better theory than anything I have," Jonas told the old man. "I say we leave the map here and head home. Tomorrow Mira and I plan to take a pickaxe and a shovel and return to that cave." Jonas turned and headed toward the door. "Come on," he told Mira. "No," she answered firmly. "Say what?" Jonas stopped, turned back, and looked at her in surprise. "What's the matter now? You are always bossing me around. You never ask, you just tell. I am your partner, not some not too bright hired hand you have to remind to get dressed every morning." His cheeks puffed as he took a deep breath and held it for a moment. He slowly let the air out of his lungs and asked, "Well, do you have anything else to say?" "No," she answered. Then in a fair approximation of Jonas's voice, she said, "Come on, let's go." She stepped around him and headed out the door. Jonas followed, shaking his head while Simon and Nora laughed at the two of them. Once on the snowmobile, Jonas steered them straight home at a fast clip, staying off to the side of the road. When they pulled into the yard, they saw a 40-foot motor home with an expanding living room pulled out and set on jacks between the back door and the bunkhouse. Blaine Martin came out and greeted them. I figured here was a good place to set up until spring. We can sleep in our own home and still have the use of the bunkhouse facilities while we fix it up. Good idea, Jonas approved. Come on in the house while I explain things. It's milking time, and we need to gather the eggs. The cows was all acting restless, so I already milked them, Blaine answered. I figured it was about time. Jonas nodded his approval. You did just right. Let's separate the milk, get the eggs, and feed the hogs. Then we have to sit down and have a powwow. You know about all the shootings we have had in the past few days. I want to lay it all out for you so you have a better idea of the lay of the land. You might want to head back into town after I tell you what is going on. Mira told Jonas, I'll get the eggs while you separate the milk. Tomorrow I want to help with the milking again. After all, if I'm going to live on my own ranch, I'd better learn how things work, right? Jonas didn't answer. Instead, he nodded his head in agreement. He led Blaine to the mild shed and started the cream separator. He showed Blaine his way to feed the hogs and sterilize the buckets, cream cans, and anything else related to human consumption. Man, you keep this place cleaner than a doctor's office. Blaine looked around amazed. This is good, he added his approval. Later, when they entered the house, Mira was playing with little Laurel. Anita rose from her chair and hurried to greet Blaine with a kiss. Okay, it's time to get our heads together, Jonas told them as he shed his down-filled parka and snowmobile suit. Come on out into the kitchen. He put on a fresh pot of coffee and sat at the head of the table. Mira sat across from him, and the Martins took the other two chairs. The deal is this. Someone wants a map we have that is supposed to be an old treasure map. The old lambskin vellum appears to be a couple hundred years old, apparently. The map was printed with a laser printer and can't be over 10 years old at the very most. A few people have come after Mira and I to take that map from us by force. You all know what happened to them. They nodded. Well, he continued, they might come back. If you decide you want to keep working for me, keep that in mind, they might come back. So if you do stay on, I want you to take your family and get the hell out of here at the first sign of trouble. I already figured on doing just that, Jonas, Blaine told him seriously. When push comes to shove, my wife and baby come first, second and third. Jonas nodded his understanding. In your shoes I would do the same. The wall phone in the kitchen sounded. Mira answered hello. Her body stiffened. She gave a little cry and dropped the phone. She curled into a fetal position and whimpered, It's him. Jonas leaped across the room in a single fast bound, grabbed up the phone and asked softly, Is this that sissy fag who gets his rocks off beating up on women? In the same conversational tone he said, Mira told me how you couldn't get it up. You were some kind of sick puppy. We had a few of you in the army. The ragheads call your type, but boys. Where are you now? Home safe with mommy. You punk. Mira looked up at Jonas from the floor, shaking her head frantically. No, 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 she moaned softly. The voice on the phone screamed, You're mine. I keep you for myself. I'm going to. You were going to give me a BJ, Jonas said, sounding as contemptuous as he could. Just keep a sack over your ugly face. He hung up the phone. No. Oh God. He's already crazy, Mira sobbed. You made him crazier. He will do crazy things, Jonas interrupted. He turned and strode purposefully into the bedroom. He returned a few moments later with a mayonnaise jar stuffed full of money and 2 handguns. One was Myra's. He handed it to her, also the jar of money. Count out $300 and give it to Blaine, he ordered. He turned to Blaine, Leave your motor home here. You and your wife take your kid and get out of here right now. Get in your truck and head straight for Walden and stay in the hotel. Blaine nodded and motioned to Anita to follow him out the door. Dear listeners, next part of this story will be released soon. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.